I'd like to call to order this work session of the Forest Grove City Council. No public comment will be taken, and the council will take no formal action. Tonight's topic is council rules, and I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Jesse Vanderzanden.
Thanks, Mayor. Members of the council, can you hear me okay?
We can. Can the audience hear him okay? Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's so
Speak
nice to
loud.
have an audience. Like, typically, we don't have this good-looking audience, so thanks.
They've come for a fun topic, council rules. I would like to, before getting started, thank Mariah for helping me out with this in preparing this work session. So with that, why don't we dive right in? So today's work session is about council rules. We'll go over the purpose, background, some of the council rules, and then discussion. Next slide. These were rules that were identified, or next slide, actually, if you would, please. So the council held work sessions on August 26th and then again on December 9th. So some of these actually kind of carried over from the previous council into this council. The issues identified for review were attendance requirements, electronic attendance, public comment, boards and commissions membership, and boards and commissions fundraising. I think the cadence of the presentation is that we'll go through kind of each one, and then Mayor, I think you were going to facilitate conversation after each one. Prior to doing that, however, we did have one housekeeping item. As you well know, the city charter was amended by the voters of Forest Grove in November, and those changes, if the council would like, need to be amended into the council rules. The kind of primary decision here for the council is whether to change the rules to match the charter. The other option would be if the council wants to just take those portions of the council rules out, you can. In this particular case, what we've done is these are the four sections that would need to be, if the rules stayed in the council rules referring to the charter, these sections would have to be amended. The parts that would come out were strike, and then the ones that are underlined, that would be new language. So I'll turn it over to you, Mayor.
Wait, so the choice is, I think the recommendation or the choice is to update and align with the charter, or we can take them all the way out. So do you want to go, I mean, is there, yes, Council President Valenzuela.
Okay. So I have an issue with 4.1. This brought back, kind of bitter memories, because I believe that political head of the city is the accurate term. And I don't want us to spend as much time as we did debating on this. Okay, I mean, I don't know if,
Yeah,
I just want to express my, my disappointment on how much time we spent on this.
Yeah, it got
Madam
voted
Mayor.
in November. It got voted to change it to this by the charter.
Yeah,
so it's
so
part of the charter. So we can't really change anything about
Okay.
it now. But I appreciate.
I wanted to make that comment nevertheless,
Yeah.
so we don't make mistakes like that in the near future.
Okay. Councilor Schimmel.
Well, I would be a proponent of completely replacing replacing the council rules altogether and having just one page. I mean, my observation was the previous council had little interest in adhering to the rules anyway, and I think it can be boiled down to a page. That's actually there was a page in our goals and objectives packet that I thought was appropriate enough, but I'm also interested in hearing from Councilor Falconer's experience with the rules.
Any comments?
My only thought is to just go ahead and amend the charter with the new adoptions.
Okay. So I'm hearing amend. Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Falconer.
Yeah, I'm also in favor of removing redundancies. I don't think it's makes a whole lot of sense to ask staff to update rules to mirror exactly the same language as the charter. The charter offers us the guidance, and that those are the rules that we all have to adhere to anyway. So my, and I would suggest that, so in terms of immediate actions, we're not taking immediate actions today, but recommendations for moving forward, I agree we should just simply remove these things because the charter already addresses them. And similar to what Councilor Schimmel was just suggesting, in my previous experience, council adhered to a one-page agreement. It covered what we needed to do to accomplish work together and act cohesively and in a respectful manner. I think that it would not be a terrible or waste of time exercise to go through our council rules and see, not only where we've got redundancies overlap with the charter, but also things that can be streamlined even further. I think we all share a mutual respect for each other. And I think that, a fresh set of eyes on the rules would probably do us and staff a lot of good.
Okay, so right now I'm hearing 2 members amend the charter to include these updates, and then 2 saying to remove these because they're already in the charter, so it's not needed. So, Councilor Valenzuela, what are your thoughts?
I think just amending
Amend the rules
the rules.
to include it like this. Yeah, so I was gonna say to remove them because we already have, like, all of these are in the charter, right? I mean, do we need?
So yes, all of the things up on the board are in the charter. And if you want to keep them in the rules, then the rules would have to be amended to reflect the charter. You can't have rules that are inconsistent with the charter. So if they stay in the rules, they do need to match what the charter says. They can't be inconsistent with it. The council does have a choice, and this is more kind of a macro discussion about how many rules do you want to have in the council rules. If that's kind of a broader conversation potentially, if the council wants staff to do an analysis about what rules are in the council rules that are redundant with the city charter, we can certainly do that analysis. I think there are quite a few areas where they overlap. There are some areas where the council rules try to explain the charter a little bit more finely or more attuned. And so I would want to make sure that, and I don't know that I can speak to all of those areas. There is actually one tonight that we're talking about that tries to kind of explain, for example, what's an excused and unexcused absence. So vacancies are explained in the charter, but like an unexcused and excused absence is not. But you'll still have vacancies and unexcused absences in the rules, but only part of it in the charter, if that makes sense. So I guess what I'm suggesting is if you do want to have that kind of reconciliation, staff can certainly do it. It's a little bit more of an analysis than what I was kind of prepared for this evening.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Falconer.
I suppose, in short, that sounds like, it's an undertaking. It would require some work. I think striking these rules could leave the rules as an entire body looking a little strange.
Right.
So, if
So sorry to interrupt.
go ahead. No, I think.
So I think we're on the same pages. Maybe we amend these rules to match the charter. But then we either have staff or subcommittee look at the charter and the council rules to see where there's overlap, some things that maybe we could take out.
Do we wait? Does this have to be done right now? We're not like voting on anything, or we're just kind of giving guidance. So why don't do we want to hold off on this until we get?
I don't know what our time frame is with this because the
I mean,
charter,
if we're looking at changing the charter.
well, it already got changed.
Okay,
So the
we're
charter
voting.
went into effect. So in order for the chart, so
Oh,
For everything.
it has to either, yeah, it has to either be like sewed up and aligned to reflect the charter and the rules have to be the same, or we have to remove them.
So just remove these from our council rules then.
We could do that.
because they're already in the charter.
Yeah, that's what,
Well, and that's, if,
But
Put
do
it
we
that
want to do
way, I
one fell
understand
swoop and get everything done at one time?
well,
Everything cleaned up.
well, that's the thing. So Jesse, what do you recommend?
Well, I guess there's, if you look at section 4.1, for example, in the council rules, there's kind of a number of things that it says. There's kind of a number of enumerations about the mayor's position. And so I guess all I'm suggesting is this is one part of that overall set. And so if you take this part out, I'm not sure exactly what the consequences may or may not be for the rest of the language.
Right.
And so I guess but I can say that all of 4.1, for example, almost all of it, if not 100% of it, is also in the charter. So,
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things I've noticed in the last few years I'm just going to be honest. When I was a counselor, I didn't spend as much time going from the charter to the council rules, like when things came up. And I spend a lot of time doing that now. And it's like, where am I looking? Is it redundant? Did I catch a hair? Now I need to go to this place. And so for me, I guess where I'm at is I would make the changes now because I don't know how long it would take staff to do the work on the rest of it. But I do think it would be in the best interest of this council to kind of take a look at it and make it more concise and simpler and straightforward. And you had something you wanted to say, Counselor Schimmel.
Yeah, just to yeah, clarify. Well, I'm okay. I would be okay with that initial direction, but I absolutely would want to replace it entirely. And I'm not an advocate of staff spending a bunch of time on this. I would not want an analysis of a stripped down version of the current rules. I would want a proposal for what can concisely be stated and on one page, just in with regard to our conduct. And I think I would maybe if I can suggest a couple of references. One might be the one pager from Councilor Falconer's previous position. The other point of reference that I thought was useful was page 5 of the City of Forest Grove City Council Goals and Objection and Action Plan, and it just basically is a list of expectations of council and expectations of staff in terms of roles and so forth. So I think if there's some cross comparison between those and see if they expressed what we wanted to, rather than doing a wholesale analysis and spending a lot of time on it.
How does the council feel about that?
sounds good.
Okay. Do you have what you need from us on that?
I do on this one, yeah. Just to kind of summarize, what I'm hearing is go ahead and make these changes now, but have a broader discussion about whether to replace the council rules potentially with something like a one-page document. You can section or page 5 in the council goals and objectives. So.
Yeah, and sorry, Councilor Falconer, that if you already provided the one
Oh, no,
pager
I
you had
haven't.
from before.
But I think there's a couple of other examples too. They're sometimes they're just called communication agreements.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think they vary between 1 and 2 pages. The city of Milwaukee, I think, is 2 pages. I think others are.
There's
Succinct.
probably quite a few examples out there. And this is something that if the council would like, I can work with LOC to kind of, ask some cities if they have 1-page or 2-page council rules or, communication agreements, council agreements. I know in some municipalities, they'll affirm those every year, right at the start of the year, make sure there's a commitment to kind of look at what those are. But if the council would like, yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to go get some examples of what that looks like, including the one that was suggested here this evening.
I think it's a really good idea because I think sometimes when there's too many rules, then you don't know any of the rules, right? And it's better just to say, these are our core values. These are how we expect to communicate with each other. And people know, like, you're going to look at that one location. Counselor Schimmel.
Yeah. Well, again, I want to reiterate, I don't want staff to spend a whole lot of time on this. I would not want to spend another valuable work session on this. I'd want to, and whether staff would it'd be helpful for a couple of counselors to screen something that could be proposed, just to expedite and avoid utilizing valuable time. The other thing is I want to make sure, in my observation, it felt like rules were being used as an instrument or a tool for control of a counselor or group of counselors, and it was wildly unproductive. So I would I'd want this group here to just commit to the values that are intended by the document, rather than it being an instrument to control any of us individually.
I understand your position on time and like staff workload, and I don't want it to be a huge lift for staff, but I also think it's important that it does come back as a work session, because otherwise we can't talk about it legally as a group. We can't say we like this one, like we can't compare the one pagers, the two pagers, and we can't say like, hey, these are the things we've noticed and we really want to make sure they're on there. So that's the only way possible to do the work on it, is in a public meeting. So I mean, we'll make sure that it's a half an hour. Like we'll try to keep it at brevity, but I think it's important that we chat about it.
I think we can each commit to, reading it, really digesting it, coming prepared with any changes and suggestions that we have, so that we can
Kill it. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're gonna move on, and we're just gonna go section by section, or like proposed update or concerns, so that way I don't get confused. Be more organized.
Okay.
So I think our next one's attendance.
Just checking the time. So section 3.11, this is the attendance duty. This is the section that's in the council rules presently. A couple things I'll just point out. Our council rules say absence for 30 days or 45 days. In some of the ensuing examples, you'll see it's 30 and 60. So just something to kind of be mindful of. Also, it says consent will be given for good cause for as follows, and then it lists 5 specific examples. These are actually an example of something that's not in the charter. The 30 and 45 days is, however, the 5 examples are not. So this would be an example of something that's not. If you go to the next slide, please. There is also a section in the council rules about excused and unexcused absence. This is mostly kind of procedure. How to notify if you're not going to be able to attend a meeting, what is excused, what's not excused, how unexcused is determined or not determined. There's an initial determination, I believe, by the presiding officer. And then if there's objection to that determination, then the council can talk about it. So that came up. If you go to the next slide, I just wanted to provide some examples. This is the one, the LOC model rules, pretty straightforward. Unless the council wants, I wasn't planning on reading all of these. I was just going to give an example. So Hillsborough's is very similar to Forest Groves, except it's 30 and 60. It also has a couple other reasons for excused absences. If you look at Beaverton's pretty simple. It just says 60 days, and it references the charter. If you go to the next one, Cornelius is a little bit longer. It also references the charter, and then it has 30 and 60 days. It does explain an excused absence. And if you go to the next 3, Walton, Tigard, and Sherwood, Tigard doesn't have anything about this. They have some ground rules that they have. They've got some code language. If you look at Tualatin, pretty short, and Sherwood is also pretty short. So I think the message here to the council is it's all over the map. So, but one commonality between those cities that do have something in the rules is 30 and 60, not 30 and 45. Some have excused, some don't. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mayor.
Yeah, if the council doesn't mind, usually I wait to have your opinion before speaking, but I feel like this one affects me a lot, because I have to determine whether someone is excused or unexcused, and it's a really awkward and uncomfortable situation for me. We're all professionals, we're all adults, and so if someone tells me they're absent, they're absent. Like, so I would really like to take that out of. I don't want to do that anymore. It's so awkward, and it's really, I think, terrible. And then the 45 days is I would rather just have it be 30 and 60, like most other municipalities. So those are my two opinions about that. I don't know how you all feel about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Agree? Okay, so we can move on. Did you get the information you need on that one?
I did.
Okay, great.
So electronic attendance, this is something that became more prominent during COVID. Some municipalities have changed their rules to reflect it. Others have not gotten around to it. Some have changed their codes to reflect it. Also, just a friendly reminder, there was state law that was passed associated with this that basically said that for public meetings such as this, there must be electronic attendance must be allowed and accommodations must be made. We of course follow state law. So we do actually have some rule language associated with this. It's 3.13. It was about telephonic attendance. It was not necessarily broad based, but it did include telephonic attendance. And you just have to notify within 24 hours and then connect the call. So pretty simple. You go to the next slide, please. So Cornelius is pretty close to ours. It does have a reference to Oregon Public Meetings Law. If you'll go back one, sorry, Mariah, you'll notice that ours does not have a reference to Public Meetings Law. So you will see that reference in most of the municipalities following this. So if you look at Tualatin, Tualatin's is a little more expansive. Theirs does appear to have been updated post-COVID. That was the most current language that, if I recall, that I could find. It references public meetings law. It references electronically or by other virtual means, consistent with the Oregon Public Meetings Law. It also says, if you'll notice at the bottom, if attending virtually with video capabilities, members of the council are expected to have their video turned on. So it explicitly states that if you're going to attend, by virtual, that you need to have your screen on to kind of demonstrate attendance. Those are the only few cities that I could find that had rules associated with this. Most of them didn't have rules. So I'll turn it back to you, Mayor. These are the considerations.
Okay, so I guess the two questions, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead and ask the question.
Okay, so I think the two questions is, do we want to revise the rules regarding this? And if so, how do we want to revise them?
I think going along with what we've talked about earlier, I don't think this would even fall under the new version of the rules. I think probably be a lot less said about this if we include it all. If it's a 1 to 2 page rule. I would also just, I have before had to attend a meeting virtually where I was very, 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 very ill, and you did not want to see me on camera, and so I did not have my camera on, but I certainly participated. So I would just sort of, use that as a personal example and anecdote for, sometimes rules have unintended consequences. That would be one personal example that I would reflect on.
Yeah, I mean, anyone else have? Are you guys okay taking it out? Or like not having it in the council rules?
So we'll still allow for video conferencing or not?
Yeah. We would allow for it, but we wouldn't update our language in the rules. I think my concern, and part of me agrees with the video because I've seen it in this council, and I think this comes to like our professionalism, where there's a portion of our council meetings where the public gets to address us, and I've seen counselors in not on this dais, but that I've worked with, turn their cameras off during public comment. And that goes against the whole purpose of our democracy, of being able to. And so, I guess but I also agree that you don't have to have a rule for, some like character that's not desirable. But I would say that there has to be an understanding that we are actively engaging. If it's a board or commission meeting, like you're participating, whether your camera is on or off. And and I think too, like during public comment, that is a part of our job, is to hear what people have to say, and that we have to look at them as they're telling us their complaints. So, but I think we can chat about that later. I think that's just the code of conduct, like how you present yourself. But Okay, so we're not going to update this, I don't think.
Okay, so is the consensus then no change for now?
That's what I'm seeing.
Okay, next slide. So public comment, I may lean on Mariah for this one. The issue that was raised here was whether persons providing public comment must list their address prior to commenting. This actually was a public comment. And the concern there was, I believe, when a public records request was made or when the information goes into the packet, the address, because it's required, automatically gets published. And those persons, in some cases, don't want to provide, or excuse me, don't want to have their address published. Is that correct, Mariah? Am I saying that correctly?
The main problem is that if a member of the public submits a public records request for contact information that's submitted in public comment, there's no exceptions to that. So we do have to release it if someone specifically requests it. I do redact all the information when I publish it in the packet, but if someone were to ask for it, we're required to release it by state law.
So this gets a little detailed, but if you look under section 6.42, it limits it to 2 minutes. You have to identify yourselves. The key one here is the third bullet. Speakers shall identify themselves by their names and by their place of residence. That has been interpreted, at least in the past, to mean your address. And so if you look at the sign-in sheet, if you look at during public comment on the agenda, it's please provide your name and address. We took a look at some other cities, and if you'll go to the next slide. So if you look at the LOC model template, it does say name and address upon the topic with which the person wishes to speak. And then it says later on, speakers shall identify themselves by the names and by their place of residence. Doesn't necessarily say address. So, but the first part does point toward an address. If you go to the next slide. Interestingly, I'm just trying to remember, most of the cities, if I recall, don't require an address. You just have to sign your name. You can say, your city, where you live, what city you live in. But if you look at Hillsborough, there's no address requirement. Beaverton does have an address requirement. Next slide. Tigard, there's no requirement. Cornelius, there's no requirement to provide information. If you look at Tualatin, it's a place of residence. It doesn't necessarily mean your address. And if you look at Sherwood, it is a name and address. So next slide, please. So some do, some don't. But I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Okay, so the question is, do we want to continue requiring address for public comment?
I think it does even feel a little bit uncomfortable when they have to give their address out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So, they can just say, I'm a resident of the city of Forest Grove. And I would be, that would be enough. That would suffice, for me. Their name and the city.
The town there.
Or maybe just like zip code.
Oh, zip code.
Zip code, and they could just say the zip code.
Yeah, it's some of the common language that we've seen is city of residence, not necessarily your address, but just the city of residence. I'm from Forest Grove.
Another consideration is city of residence or business, because sometimes, someone is speaking to us as maybe an expert in a field and their residence really isn't relevant. They might live in another city or another state altogether, but they're conducting business for an organization here in town or work here in town.
You said city of relevance.
Resident, but it might not be
Being
relevant.
Yeah.
Right. So if someone, is doing business here, but their residence is in another state, to me, it's not really relevant where the person lives. It's the conduct.
Yep.
It's someone providing.
So if what I'm hearing is a consensus to change the language to city of residence and or business residence,
Yeah.
something like that.
Mhm.
Okay, we can come back with some language on that. Okay, electronic public comment. We don't have any language that addresses this. The LOC rules doesn't have any language that addresses electronic comment. If you go to the next The only city with electronic public comment language that staff could find is Hillsborough. And it says individual or community groups desiring to provide public comment virtually must register with the city by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting and provide their name, address, email, phone, and a general topic. So the way the meetings are currently working for the city council is you call in, and then the mayor, if they raise their hand, they are called upon in Hillsborough. Apparently they have to sign up by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. But we haven't found any of that type of requirement in any other city. So
Do y'all want to require electronic attendees to register in advance?
No, I don't think so. I personally
You
don't.
know, require in person.
Yeah, we don't. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I think that maybe one of the things I could potentially do for the second bullet is just say, could you give me your name and your place of, your zip code or whatever.
Yeah.
So then, and then I add it to the list and put Zoom attendee or something like that.
yeah, if we change the language associated with the place of residence, then we would change it on the sign-in sheet. We could change it on the agenda. We could change it in the
Yeah. Okay.
your remarks. So, okay. Sorry, I'm just making notes. So written public comment, Forest Grove section 6.42 says that written comments received by 3 the day of the meeting will be included in the official record for that meeting. Written comments received after that time will be in the official record of the following meeting. LOC doesn't have any rules associated with that. Comments submitted by email often list addresses and phone numbers, and the city is not able to withhold that information if requested in a public records request. Emailed public comment creates challenges for staff in determining whether to include attachments, forwarded messages, invitations, etc. Limiting written comment to the online form would streamline the process. I think one of the considerations, and Mariah, may I lean on you for help with this one. I think to frame this, one of the questions would be if for public comment, there is a public comment form currently on the website that allows you to select an individual counselor, all the counselor, staff, etc. That's not the only means by which written public communication can come into the city. We can receive it by email. We can receive it by snail mail. We can receive it somebody coming here and setting it down on the dais and asking Mariah to provide it. So, Mariah, if you would you kind of explain further kind of what you're getting at with this one?
Yeah, it's essentially what it says, just that it does kind of become complicated. As you know, people can submit public comment through the city councilor's email address, and then determining whether that should be included in public comment can become a little bit difficult. And then we do have people sometimes drop things off, and when they drop it off, in the front office, it takes a while for it to make it up to me sometimes. So it just kind of creates some issues on what should and shouldn't be completed. So having a little bit more of direct rules on what is and is not included in written public comment just kind of cleans that up.
Yep. I'll turn it over to you, Mayor.
Okay, what do y'all think? So I guess I have another question, but I mean, is it part of our rules that we include all of these emails we get in public comment? Because I've had community members kind of like, hey, I was writing you this question about X, Y, and Z. You
Yeah.
responded, but I didn't want it included in the packet. Like, I don't want it to be part of the public process. So I'm just curious, does this help fix that?
Well, I'll maybe provide a little bit more information. Typically, what it's been is if it's an individual comment or letter to an individual counselor or to the mayor, that has not gone into the packet because it's not addressed to the body. It's not addressed to the council. If we have received comments that did go to the entire council, whether in written form, whether online, whether it was handed to us, then those have been the ones that have been included in the packet. And Mariah, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's been submitted to the council, does it automatically go in the packet, or can the person writing the council say, please do not include this in the city council packet? Can they?
If they were to specifically say they didn't want it included in written public comment, then we could definitely, if I saw that in the communication, I would definitely withhold it. But that is, I think to answer your question, I do think that this would help with that issue. Because like I said, right now it's me going through what's sent to the full council and trying my best to decide if they meant it submitted as public comment. And sometimes I'll reply to people and ask them if they intended it to be included or not. But that's kind of the best that I can do. If we do decide to go this route, what I could do is add a third option or another option on the online form that is specifically public comment. So they could choose to send an email to the full council just to communicate with you, and then they could choose to submit something as public comment. And both would go to the full council, but it would be more clearly marked for us whether they want to include it in the packet.
Well, I support it if it makes it clear to the community and easier for you, which is I'm hearing. So I would support this.
I don't know that the public's ready. Given what I understand of different demographics and the way that they generally communicate, I fully respect the efficiency on staff. I worry that the public in its entirety is not ready for it.
Go ahead.
I agree. I think there's probably still a segment of our population who aren't very computer literate.
How would we inform the public about this change so that we could alleviate some of this? I guess a follow-up question, or maybe even a question I have before that, is how long has this practice been in place where every single written piece of communication that is sent to the full council or handwritten note to you, left at the front desk, how long has it been our practice that simply gets added to the record? Because I don't think that that's a wide practice. I think we're pretty unique. So a lot, I mean, there's often times where someone will submit testimony on a specific, if there's a hearing, right? And so it's very clear where that is supposed to go. But sometimes when I'm reading through my packet, there's, maybe 30 or so emails that are kind of at the top of my packet, and sometimes they don't even address city business at all.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious about the history, and then also how could we phase in a more streamlined process?
So as far as the history part about, and I want to, sometimes parts of this kind of get conflated. There's the part about that goes into the council packet, and then there's the part that Mariah was addressing earlier where whether it is exempt from public records or whether it's not exempt upon request of somebody for the public records. So as far as the historical precedent, it's as long as a letter that's written to the full council, whether electronic or whether by mail or any form, I've been here almost 10 years, and it's been since I was before then. So, so I don't know. Right. I'm looking at the mayor. Mayor's been here longer than I have.
Yeah, but same.
So,
It's been that way. But I don't know.
yeah. What we can do, if the council would like, is we can kind of go do some additional research on this to see if it's common practice that if a letter is written to the full council, that it goes into the packet, or that it just gets distributed to the council electronically, but not necessarily go into the packet. We could look at whether that's a common practice or not a common practice. Ryan, did you want to add anything further? So.
I would say that if we did make this change, we could definitely add language saying that if someone has an accessibility request, if they say, I'm not able to submit this through the form and they still want it included, we can definitely make exceptions for that. I think that would be pretty easy to do. And then as far as informing the public, I think especially during the adjustment period, I would respond to any emails sent and let them know that if they want it included in the packet, I'll send out the link to them and let them know to put it in there, to submit it there. So that way I can communicate to people directly. And then I believe in the past, the language of how to submit was included in the agendas. So we could update it so that the link is included there and kind of have a shortened link as well. So we could coordinate to make sure that everyone knows how to submit that. And then I would be able to respond to people directly if they submitted things incorrectly. I wouldn't just not include it. I would try my best to reach out to them first.
Council President Valenzuela.
I do not support this for reasons that Councilor Martinez mentioned before. Not everyone has internet, for example. Some people will never really have the desire to learn, to use a computer. Some people just don't feel that desire to do that. So, perhaps having this as an option for those, who like to do things online, but also we have to have the option to make this, we need to be accessible. We need to make it easy for the public to participate. And we have our senior citizens, perhaps, that, don't have a computer or they don't know how to use, not some of them do, but not all of them. So I think we need to open the doors to let the people speak to us. And we need to make it easy for them. So
I guess I assumed, and so now I'm kind of like questioning, maybe I assumed wrong. We're still going to accept written public comment all the ways we normally have, correct? But this was like on our website where if people are using the forum request to email us to do public comment, this would be just another option, right? To say like, hey, we want it. So this is in addition, right?
There's different options. I think our ask mainly is rather than accepting public comment through email is directing people to the forum. So we could also have the option of, still accepting public comment dropped off and mailed in, but simply removing email as an option, because I think email is really the one that tends to create more issues. I don't actually receive a lot of public comment in paper form. It happens now and then, but it's not too frequent. It's more when receiving them through email kind of creates a lot of these issues and confusion. So maybe saying that we'll accept written public comment, submitted by mail, dropped off, or via the form are the three options, something akin to that.
I think maybe just to kind of, so if they're already responding electronically by email, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mariah, but it's fine to obviously respond like that. Can you please fill out this form, kind of direct them to that, if you will. But written comment by mail, by drop off, that all would still be perfectly acceptable.
Okay, so I'm not reading this correctly. It says to require that written public comment to be submitted through the online form.
Yeah, it should probably say, does the council want to require that written electronic public comment be submitted through the online form?
Okay,
Is that
well,
correct,
that makes
Mariah?
that makes it different to
Yeah,
me.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I misunderstood that.
Yeah, sorry.
I apologize.
No, it's that,
No,
we
I
should have
think it
been
was
clearer
written.
on
You read
that.
Okay, Counselor Schimmel, what do you want to say?
Well, I would still stand by the not changing anything until we get the public actually doing the behaviors that we're aspiring to before eliminating options. An example is if I want to do public comment, I'd want to go to the front page of the website and immediately see that where to do that, and I can't right now. So just to the point of Counselor mentioning making it easy, I think whatever we do, that's got to be the principle. Is it easy for the public to provide public comment? That we should always be asking ourselves for anything that we want to change, and I agree with Jesse that as people are providing public comment, we can tell them about our aspiration to use a certain tool, but that tool's got to be extremely easy to access or find. And then the other thing is we're not hearing from 1/3 of our population, population. So somehow we've got to adapt the process to reach as much as we do to simplify and make it efficient.
Right, so let's pause on this one because we have 14 minutes left and
Okay.
we haven't even got to the ones that are probably going to be the
right.
most discussion.
Sounds good.
You know what I mean? See,
Okay, board and commission membership and fundraising. Background, the council held 2 work sessions in 2023. There was a subcommittee that was created by resolution. The subcommittee met 8 times. They made recommendations to the council, and the council passed several resolutions and ordinances to change the council rules pertaining to boards and commissions. Next slide. Most cities have a handbook governing boards and commissions approved by the city council rather than listing them in the council rules. We're a little bit unique there. The handbook does, however, has bylaws, guidelines, et cetera, very similar to what the council rules are. It's just a different way to kind of have it promulgated. Yeah,
can I
Mayor.
interrupt really quick? So are we doing both of them right now, the fundraising and the membership, or are
We're doing the membership one first, and then
Okay.
I think the fundraising one
Did I
second.
just skip
Sorry if
ahead? I
that was a
could've
little
swore I saw
confusing.
fundraising.
We combined them and then
Okay, I was like, what's
we
going
combined them
on?
before we separated them.
Okay,
so.
great. Thanks.
So,
Thank you. Sorry.
so with regard to the membership, and it varies by different cities. Hillsborough, you must live in the city. Beaverton, for different ones you can, other ones you do not. But most of the cities, it's in your bylaws, and those bylaws can vary depending upon what that commission is. For Forest Grove, just a friendly reminder, I believe under the budget committee, you have to reside in the city, and I think planning commission, I think, can have somebody outside the city, but those are more statutory based as opposed to bylaw based. So next slide, please. So with regard to membership, as I mentioned, it was governed by individual bylaws. It varied from all members must reside in the city to, in some cases, almost half could reside from outside the city. Outside the city in the old bylaws, if you will, was not defined. So what the subcommittee recommended was that a maximum of 2 members per board and commission may reside outside the city. And then when the council took the issue up, they defined outside of the city to mean so long as they reside within the Forest Grove School District. So for example, the Library Commission, it's a commission of 9. If in the past before it allowed 3 to be from outside of the city, the new council rules would require those bylaws be amended to say, of the 9, 7 must live within the city and the other 2 must reside within the school district. They could be outside the city, but within the school district. That's now the rule for all the boards and commissions with the exception of planning and budget
And EDC.
and EDC. Yeah.
A little burnt.
So next slide. So would the council like, turn it over to you,
Would the
Mayor.
council like to change the board and commission membership provision? Counselor Schimmel.
My proposal would be the membership would include live, work, own business or property, or have a vested or is a vested contributor to Forest Grove. And I know the latter one is nebulous, but we do have effectively an interview process for people so we ascertain what the contribution they make is. It could be a realtor from outside the city who contributes to real estate here, or it could be a contractor, or any profession that is contributing. It could be an artist that has some contribution to the Forest Grove that we benefit from. And so I think because through the interview process we bring that out, but I guess that's the scope I would propose.
I thought we had already been doing that, allowing business owners.
Well, I think that's, yes, but
I'm just stating the full,
I think
proposing a full scope.
it's actually only business owners on EDC.
Yeah. Oh,
So it's not EDC. My understanding when we updated the council rules were we were like trying to get it uniformed, but then when it came to EDC, because people represent businesses, they live outside, we said, okay, this group doesn't have to follow it. For me, I think it's also important to highlight that we changed the interview process for boards and commissions since we updated this rule. And I feel like there's so many checks that I would like to see us get rid of it altogether. Because, I mean, or to, like, we have vacancies on a majority of our boards and commissions. Okay, so it's not like we're overflowing with people who want to volunteer. There's that. There's also the fact that the council liaisons with the staff liaison interviews or has a conversation with the person applying. Okay, so there's two, right? So then, and then it's recommended to whoever the mayor is, and then the mayor decides. And then furthermore, these are advisory board and commissions. So there's no, like, they tell us like, hey, this is what we think. So, I mean, I'm okay. If Mariah, can you go back to the other slide, please? So on the last bullet point, I mean, I'm fine, I guess, leaving it a maximum of 2 members of each board and commission may reside outside of Forest Grove, and then striking the rest of it. Because I think what you were saying, and you said it was kind of nebulous, but like, I would argue that there could be people who like used to live in Forest Grove, who still are really much connected, but they live, you know, maybe outside of Gaston or in that Gaston area, that zip code of 97117 by the lake. That's not like, or maybe even past, and they're in Gaston School District. Like, they would never be able to volunteer in Forest Grove. But this is the community that they call home. This is where they shop. This is where they spend money. And I think that connecting people, whether they're on the outskirts of Forest Grove or not, is what makes Forest Grove great. So that would be so I guess I would agree with Brian, but I would even not have any delineating factors. Councilor Falconer.
I was actually pleasantly surprised to learn during my orientation with Parks and Rec that we have that we use geographic for membership to that board, and I actually think that's one where that's really important. You know, I think because I have seen service districts where, you know, there's too much representation from people who are already very well parked. They have lots of access to parks, and that can have some really, you know, bad, you know, that can disadvantage people who live in areas that don't have access to green space and parks. And so I think I would be great with, you know, what you just suggested, that a maximum of 2 members each may reside. And I think that's what I understand that there are on the Parks and Rec Commission. There are 2 at large at least.
Mhm.
So that would fit. I also think that this, you know, this should reside, you know, in the bylaws. I think, you know, I'm not sure if we still have these existing in multiple locations, and
So-
if so, can we clean that up?
Well, actually, all the board and commissions that were not otherwise required by statute updated their bylaws to reflect this language. So if the council changes it, they just change those bylaws. But the individual boards and commissions would have
But this
the
is
council
also,
would have to approve new bylaws. Yeah,
this is also in our council rules.
it is. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
my question.
So that's like the thing, is maybe we can create, I mean, if the goal is to create alignment and uniformity with board and commissions,
Mhm.
like, I like the idea of having a board and commission handbook, right? Then when people get on it, they're handed the handbook, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a nice little organized system.
Yeah, we can certainly create a handbook. Absolutely.
Okay, anyone else have opinions about this?
Just if it were to change, I think that members of the community should have first option over anybody outside of the community.
Is anyone opposed to striking the last from after the comma? So I would like to strike so long as they reside within the Forest Grove School District.
I agree.
You're okay with that?
I agree with that.
Okay. Okay. Okay, we got consensus.
Okay.
So let's talk about fundraising.
All right. I want to be mindful of time.
I was thinking, if we go over by 5 minutes, are we okay, Brian? Okay. Okay, so he said, he gave me the thumbs up.
Give me a thumbs up. I'll go quick.
You're afraid to even start it.
So, board and commissions fundraising. Again, this was something that came from the subcommittee. Where it was not addressed in the council rules prior. The subcommittee made some recommendations. What the council ended up passing was basically something in the council rules that says no fundraising is allowed. However, if a board or commission does want to fundraise, they just need to seek council approval. So what we have done as staff is we've put together a fundraising request form, and this request form is something that if a board and commission wants to do a fundraiser, it asks the name, the contact person, the purpose of it, what the activity is, what the plan is. And so with that, I know this has been something that the Public Arts Commission has been talking about. They've been working with the council liaison and also the staff liaison. I do know that the PAC does want to continue looking at fundraising and are also trying to explore ways that it doesn't require as much staff time, that it meets, applicable rules and regulations. Some of the concerns that when the rules were passed were public meetings, making sure that any meetings were, because it was a public body, they were, following public meetings law. Procurement practices was something to talk about. So in the receipt, but also the expenditure of the money, to make sure that if a board and commission receives or expends money, that they were following appropriate government procurement practices and also public accounting practices. And then the third one, of course, was kind of this staff time. If it does require an agenda and a public meeting notice and so forth, I think the thought is in applying for the fundraising, it would explain kind of what that is so that if the council wanted to appropriate staff time for that, there would be some kind of thought about how much that would be. So I think, is there another slide, Mariah? Okay. I'm kind of skip past some of this. So the council amended the council rules. Board and commissions shall not fundraise unless authorized by the council. I mentioned the template. We could not find any other examples of any city boards and commissions that conduct fundraising. We did find examples of public arts commissions or something similar to that that did receive city money. They did not fundraise. In those cases, there were some nonprofits that fundraise, and they may have, partnered with that particular commission. But there were some commissions, Tualatin, for example, I think Sherwood, that did receive some city money. Just as a reminder, the city did appropriate some transient lodging tax revenues for the Public Arts Commission. That was in last year's budget. I believe it's a certain percentage of the overall TLT budget. Anyways, it equals about anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000 per year. So with that, next slide. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mayor, for
I
questions.
have two questions before
Yeah.
we start discussion. So that template, the form and the request for fundraising, I think happened 2 years ago. So in the last, is that right? 2 years ago?
Is that-
We made that change about 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
the change was about 2 years ago, I think.
So has
Yeah.
anyone, I don't remember getting any requests for fundraising. I'm trying to remember.
I may want to lean on Colleen for this. I think there has been 2 requests. They were for board and commission subcommittees. I
They're not
don't
for
believe it
fundraising.
was for fundraising, but the subcommittees may have been about trying to raise funds. But they were for board and commission subcommittees, and one of them, I believe, went into the consent agenda. The staff and council liaison worked with that particular commission, and the council approved it.
Yeah.
So-
Okay, but I'm just going to clean up your answer a little bit so it's clear. But no board or commission has asked to fundraise, has filled out that template.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
No.
And then my second question is, with those TLT funds, do those roll over each year? So if
We
they-
have rolled those over in the budget, yes. Mhm.
Perfect. So like right now they should have because I don't believe they've used any public
Yeah,
works has
I-
used
I
that. So they
think,
should have
you
about
know,
20,000.
What we did last year was I believe the amount was in the last budget cycle. The amount from the previous year was rolled into last year. That was approved by the budget committee and by the council. The question about those monies rolling over again is going to be up to the budget committee and the council. So assuming at this point, I think there's probably $20-some thousand because it's approximately 2 years worth. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. So we'll open it up for discussion. Councilor Martinez.
So, yeah, I'm opposed to letting them do fundraising. The library has 2 501c3s. 501c3 is within reason to set up. It's when I did some research on it, I think it was less than $700, if my memory serves me right, to set up a 501c3. And that would be the best way for them to keep track of the money and do what they want to do without having a lot of us overseeing. And it was a lot of work for staff to have to take care of the monies.
Council President Valenzuela.
Thank you. Yes, I have a question. Before the they lost the ability to fundraise. I would like to know, Jesse, were there any issues with them fundraising? Did that have a negative impact in any way to the staff, to city staff?
No, I don't. I wouldn't characterize it as something that was negative. I think there were times where we had to clarify some things, but I don't know that there was any negative impact. No. Mm-mm.
Exactly, because that's one of the things that I could not believe that our council had voted to change that. The Public Arts Commission has done a lot of work, beautiful work for our city. And like I said at that time, they are, a solid commission. And I think we took a lot from them at that time and gave our staff more work. Before they would just get together, organize a fundraiser, get what they needed, beautify our city. And now what happens? They have to get a subcommittee, ask for permission to do that. Then for the fundraiser, it's it takes more time. It's, I don't know, very bureaucratic, I think. And
I don't think that anybody's saying that they don't do good things. I say from a transparency issue, where's the money? Does it go back into the general fund? Does it go directly to
that's why I asked Jesse.
that are fundraising for that board and commission?
See,
Where's the money? And I think that's why the suggestion was a 501c3, so that is where the fundraise can go. They can do what they want with that money. They can invest it differently, earn more money for that organization. That's the only thing that I was thinking.
Yeah, but that's why I asked if there were any issues in the past before this happened, because that's the last thing I think we want to do is to bring up like the word transparency makes it seem like, perhaps they were not being transparent or that they were doing something wrong.
It toward any board
right?
and commission. I'm talking about any board and commission across the board. It
Yeah.
should be the same thing.
Well, they were really, like
Parks and Rec wants to do something. They should. I've been trying to find a way to
Yeah.
do a 501c3, like Friends of the Parks and Rec, so that they can earn money on the side and not have it. It's a different way of raising money. It
yes,
has
but I
nothing to
don't
do
think.
with any specific organization or board and commission. It's just, where does the money go? When they fundraise money, does it go into a general fund? Does it go back directly to that board and commission? Where does it go?
I believe that that's what happens. It goes directly back to the board, the board of or commission. But since I asked you and you said that there were no issues. Now, when this happened and this 503c idea came about, they were very unhappy. The members of the board, they were very unhappy. So these are people that volunteered. They volunteer their time, not only for the meetings, but on their weekends, to get things done. And, we discourage people. That's what I think, we cannot make them create a 503c.
I think, I'm like literally sitting in the middle. I think you'll have valid points on both sides. And I think, my understanding of the request and the template to fundraise was to try to thread that needle to compromise. So right now, my understanding is in our current rules, we're not saying that they cannot fundraise. We're saying if they would like to fundraise, we need to know the staff time that's going to be spent on it, how it's we need to have information so then staff can make a better decision and then council can decide. So I don't know. I mean, I understand. I've talked to people. I agree with, I think everyone on the Parks and Rec, we do say Parks and Rec because no other commission was fundraising. And I think they do great work. And I don't think this is, and for me, it's not anything against this committee. It's protecting staff time and transparency. And then also if we allow Parks and Rec to fundraise openly without filling out a template, without these things, we don't, and then maybe, I guess, Parks and Rec might want to do that. And then maybe CCE will want to do that. And we don't really have our staff is really thin right now. And so for me, that's always my concern is workload for staff. because we have a really thin city hall for a full service city. So I guess that's kind of, and I think my concern right now is and I'm going to be very blunt and I hope I don't offend anyone, but if I would have seen that Parks and Rec has like requested, to fundraise and they've done all these things and, then they're saying, hey, we've done this, we know how much staff time, or we're doing all this work. But from my understanding, they haven't requested to fundraise. And so I don't know why we would change it when it doesn't seem like it's really a need. I guess I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to figure out why, like what's changed in these 2 years to show us a need to change this rule. Like, what are we trying to fix? Whenever I change a rule, it's to fix something.
Mhm.
So
So I
I don't
think-
know.
That was my, yeah.
Counselor Schimmel.
I'll let Jesse.
Hi, Jesse.
I think one of the intentions behind the forum, at least if I recall the discussion a couple of years ago, this is testing my memory, was it was intended to address kind of several things. One was public meetings requirements. So if you're having some type of meeting about fundraising, to recognize that that is a public meeting and that does need to be appropriately noticed, opportunity for public comment, there's going to be report, etc. Coupled with that was the estimate of the staff time that might be associated with that. If you're going to have extra meetings and that requires staff, whether it's posting the agenda, attending the meeting, taking minutes, etc., I think we wanted to get a better idea of what that would require. Sometimes they require, depending on what you may want to put together, it could require multiple meetings. And then I think the third part was just making sure that there was, from a public procurement perspective, if it involves finances, there are public procurement guidelines that are associated with that. And we just wanted to make sure that if there was some type of request, that those guidelines are followed for public procurement, whether it's in the receipt and the accounting of the funds, and then also the corresponding receipt to the individual that donated the money and how that gets accounted. And then also the spending of those funds from a public procurement perspective to make sure that when you do public procurement, we have different guidelines than a private procurement. We have to, go through different processes to ensure that it's fair, that it's equitable, that it's noticed. We want to make sure that those guidelines, whether it's an RFP process or RFQ or whatever, are also followed. And so those were just some of the things that were talked about at the time when this issue kind of came up. I think it was less about kind of how it had been kind of working and more about just making sure that if it did move forward, to make sure that it kind of followed the appropriate processes moving forward, recognizing that there could be things when it comes to a fiduciary responsibility that both the commission and the city would have. So that's all.
Counselor Schimmel.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jesse, for the context and explanation. That's helpful. But I know the attention on this process is with the public arts, and I've like Councilor Valenzuela said, given the volume of contribution they make, I want to make that contribution, as easy but legal and proficient as possible. I guess I would ask through you if your staff liaison by nod or thumbs up would say that the current process was adequate for public arts to function with fundraising as they have. I mean, is it adequate? Does it provide the means that they need to take advantage? Mm-hmm. Is that an annual or regular process? I wonder if there are regular types
Regular.
of funding that they do annually that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there, before you weren't done, sorry.
Um,
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, in just honoring Councilor Marshall's thought on the nonprofit, that's aspirational, but I agree with Councilor Valenzuela that we don't dictate when 501c3 gets created, so that's a bit treacherous ground to do that. But if we think the process satisfies the obligations that we have as a municipality, I'd want to try to some way find some seamless means for them to do their fundraisers if we can provide some advance approval.
Well, I guess my question is with the Meet the Artist dinners that they have done them. So I guess I'm just confused. Like, why not fill out the form and say, hey, we want to do a Meet the Artist dinner it's going to be sometime during one of these 3 months. And since they have done it a few times, like I feel like that can be done in a meeting, and then we can see if this works. And then we can also, someone can make a motion like, hey, we're going to, from here on out, approve that they can do these without this form because they've done some. But I mean, I guess I'm just not understanding why I don't understand why they're hesitant to fill out the form to do the Meet the Artist dinner. Oh yeah, I don't think, Colleen, do you mind coming up to the table so they could be picked up on the, my question? I don't think.
I have a question really quick.
Yeah, okay, let's go ahead.
Okay, so before they do this, don't they need to create a subcommittee
No, I don't think so.
and then do the fundraising thing?
No, I think it depends on how they're doing it.
Okay.
So my question was, what is the road or what's the barrier from filling out the form to doing the Meet the Artist dinner?
Well, I think it's just the planning process, that they have to schedule the application for your packet and get the timeliness of all of it in order to get approval. And if you didn't approval, they may already have stuff in the works. It feels like kind of an obstacle they've had 20 of these dinners. And so they do them without without too much effort. They get a host to host them. They sell tickets to them based on what the host says. How many people they can have at their house, and if they want to do a full dinner, and the host sets the cost. The host invites the artist. So what the Public Arts Commission does about this is create the posters that says we're having this dinner at this person's house, and here's how much the tickets are, and here's where to get your tickets. What I do about this is pretty much go to the dinner. I have no responsibility whatsoever for creating these dinners. They do all of that.
And then the financial stuff, Jamie takes care of after.
They collect the money, yes, and they do the accounting, make sure everybody paid and all that good stuff, and then they hand over the total amount to Jamie, who deposits it in the Public Arts Commission fund.
Well, I would support having, like, if this is something they would like to do, and I know they've done it, and I know they've done it really well, but so, like, having them fill out the form one time and asking for permission to continue to do this type of fundraising. I think that could be something that could go in the consent agenda. But that would be something I would support. I don't know how the rest.
We're
I
approving
think
the
at least then we could reassess, because there's new counselors here too that were not present when we discussed this at length. And it wasn't just Colleen's time, but it was quite a bit of Jamie's time. And then probably, if I remember right, about 8 hours a week that she needed to do all the with the money, because she had to, document everything and go deposit and all of that. It was a lot responsible. Did you?
Yes.
Okay,
because there was a
CNC, we need to know all that
That would be on
information
the form
too.
with how much staff
Mhm.
time it would take. And This is just one of those things. It's a form, just like you would if you wanted to go, you know, rent a gym. Like it's no different than anything else with the city that we do. You want to shut down a street, you got to fill out a form. If they fill out one form and it takes precedence for the whole year, then that's what it is. We can agree on that, but there has to be something that says that they're going to be fundraising for this, so we know, keep it on our radar.
Counselor Falconer.
If I had $1 million and I wanted to write a check to the Arts Commission to be used for public art, would I be required to come to the council and ask this council permission to be able to hand over my $1 million to the Arts Commission to be able to benefit? I'm asking all this room because I feel like
No, you
I
wouldn't.
feel like this is sort of a hypothetical question. I think the city would gladly accept my $1 million. For the record, I do not have $1 million. But I'm just sort of really wondering, like, what problem are we trying to solve here? I mean, if a group of residents or one resident has $1 million that they want to hand over to the Arts Commission, I think we would gladly accept it. Am I wrong?
Mariah has something. I think Mariah has a comment.
Just from the staff perspective, one of the issues that arose was public meetings laws. So when they're planning these dinners, any of the meetings that they have to plan them are subject to public meeting laws, and they do have to meet those requirements, which do include putting out agendas, which was part of Jamie's time for it. And then even the meeting the artist dinners, there's the possibility, if there's too many of the Public Arts Commission there, that could be subject to a public meeting law. And then that creates some issues with accessibility if it's being charged for.
So I just real quick, because, you know, they do meet regularly. The Arts Commission meets regularly. And I think that planning can take place at their regular meetings for these events. Often there's more than a quorum of people and I would say that a fundraising dinner, many of us have been to fundraising dinners where there's a quorum of us, and we adhere to the public meetings laws by not conducting business when we're at those social events. That's allowed. We just had training on this.
Yep.
And as long as they're not conducting business and making decisions, deliberating toward a decision, I think that falls within the social meeting.
Agreed. Is there consensus as a compromise to have Public Arts Commission fill one of these forms out and give them a year of Meet the Artist dinners, so that way they know that they can plan these, and then we will test the waters? And is that a good compromise? Can we live with that? Okay, cool. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Colleen. Sorry to put you, I know you don't like coming in the hot seat, but
Thank you, Colleen.
you did great. Thank you. And that's the last one, right? Jesse, do we have?
That was it? I
Okay,
believe so.
I'm going to adjourn this work session of the Forest Grove City Council, and I'm going to immediately, not immediately because TVC-TV needs a minute, but we're going to start our next work session shortly. Of the Forest Grove City Council. Floodplain Management Development Code amendments. And we have our community development planner and director here, and we will get started. I'm like trying not to get distracted.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council,
chatting.
Brian Paul and Dan Reardon from Community Development. Next slide, please. There's our agenda. Next slide, please. So purpose tonight is to talk about some impending changes to the floodplain development ordinance. I'm going to just completely go off script because I'm going to assume that you guys have read this, and I can cover it a lot faster if I just talk to you guys. Basically, this kind of comes back down to what we call the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, which was created in the 1960s, subsequent to some flooding in the 20s and 30s, where private insurers stopped carrying or offering flood insurance policies. And so the only way to provide flood insurance policies was for the federal government to step in. And with that, the federal government also required that communities who participate in this flood insurance program pass certain regulations at the local level in order to minimize flood risk. It was never about environmental protection. It wasn't even about life safety, if you can believe that. It was simply about getting structures out of harm's way, getting them up and elevated, and limiting any potential damage to those structures, thereby limiting claims under the National Flood Insurance Program. Slide, please. However, despite this being the intent of the National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP, in 2009, several environmental groups on behalf of NMFS, National Marine Fisheries Services, sued FEMA, kind of basically saying that the actions that were being allowed in the floodplain were causing harm to listed endangered species. In this case, the coho salmon mainly, but not just the coho salmon. There are a number of salmonid sort of things that live in floodplains. And FEMA went to go ahead and enter into an agreed judgment with NMFS. And in 2016, the BIOP was issued, basically saying that there is danger to endangered species, and we needed to fix that somehow. Next slide, please. In 2021, FEMA voluntarily issued a draft implementation plan. In 2024, there was some additional threats of lawsuits and things like that, basically saying that this wasn't moving fast enough. And so FEMA issued this pre-implementation compliance measure. Any areas that are part of this ESA habitat are subject to this regulation. That includes Forest Grove. And the city notified FEMA that we intend to pursue a certain option, which we'll talk about in just a second, that will be effective July 1st, 2025. And that will come before you as a development code amendment at your next meeting. Next slide, please. So all of these communities are the kinds of communities who are required to be in the program. Next slide, please. You'll see that this is not actually a huge issue for Forest Grove. Most of our city has been, urban growth boundaries kind of almost defined by the floodplain to the south. There are only a handful of flood insurance policies in the entire city. Many of the new developments that have happened in the floodplain have actually elevated grade out of the floodplain and gotten letters so that those homeowners don't have to insure their structures for flood insurance. So that's the map right there. You can see that not much is covered under the floodplain within the city of Forest Grove. Next slide, please. So under the PICM, the pre-implementation compliance measures, our options are to either A, prohibit all new development in the floodplain, incorporate ESA development standards through the model ordinance, or option 3, require a habitat assessment for any floodplain applications in the 100-year floodplain that show basically no net loss of floodplain functions with that slide. No net loss is kind of saying basically that there's no loss of functions to the floodplain, meaning floodwater storage, quality, vegetation, things like that. Next slide, please. The recommended approach, and this was both with city legal as well as staff, is that option 2, which is to implement the model ordinance, is probably the best path for us. Option 1 being the most restrictive, saying that basically you can't develop in the floodplain at all, could lead to takings clause. I've been through this before in other lives, so that's a very unpleasant way to go. Option 3 is ad hoc, and given the requirement for housing development to kind of have clear and objective standards, a habitat assessment is not inherently a clear and objective standard. So legal has recommended option 2, which is to bring back the model ordinance to you. Next slide, please. It's just basically just going to result in making amendments to the floodplain ordinance that was last amended in 2016 and 2018. And that will just be limited to Development Code 8, which is general development standards with the floodplain. As far as a model ordinance overview, I mean, a lot of these things the NFIP is already kind of doing, but we are revising and updating additional floodplain management definitions, compliance with requirements, including penalties if you don't comply, local administration, including local floodplain administrator duties, and then of course, as we talked about before, standards of protection of floodplain functions, including the standard for loss. Next slide, please. These are the activities that will be exempt. And so basically, if you're not doing what's really development per se, things like doing your maintenance of your structure, you're pouring new concrete for a patio or something like that, landscaping, things like that, they're all exempt from these requirements. Next slide. There are ways that, and a lot of this is already in the floodplain development code. There are ways to minimize flood losses. that include potentially anchoring structures, elevating structures, having construction methods that minimize flood damage, and of course, requiring things like, HVAC units and things like that to be elevated above the flood as well. Please. And for new residential development, like subdivisions, some of the protection from loss includes constructing public utilities to minimize floodplain damage, ensuring adequate drainage to reduce exposure to flood hazards, complying with no net loss of floodplain function standards. Next slide, please. So we're gonna have a little bit of extra time here because we just flew through that. Planning Commission heard this set of development code amendments on April 21st and unanimously recommended approval to the City Council of option 2. After tonight's work session, which might be generous to call it a work session at this point, but after tonight's work session, we will have public hearings scheduled. We do have public hearings scheduled for May 12th and May 27th to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation. And adopting the ordinance by the end of May, when you add on the 30-day clause for when it goes effective, will allow us to be in compliance by June 30th, 2025, day before date. And the city maintains the eligibility in the NFIP. You might ask yourself right now, what would happen if we don't do this? We could be kicked out of the National Flood Insurance Program, which means those who need flood insurance would have to seek it elsewhere. And there is not much private insurance out there. Last time I checked, I think Lloyd's of London was the only private flood insurance broker. But it would be a pretty huge, for the few people who do have flood insurance policies in Forest Grove, it would be a pretty huge burden. And that's also, that's a big reason to do this, but also we may not be eligible for disaster relief dollars as well. With that, we have a few minutes and happy to take any questions or discussion.
Thank you for starting late and breezing through that. Any questions,
I
comments?
can breathe now.
Counselor Schimmel.
Well, I'm good with option 2, and I want to praise you for speaking to us and not the slides. So I want to encourage just telling us what it means to us and trusting that we've read it.
Yeah, I agree with option 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Agree.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
2 minutes to spare.
Thank you.
Go.
Thank
Thank
you,
you. This work session is adjourned. We're going to take a 5 to maybe 10-minute break before our council meeting. No question. Right. Okay, I'd like to call to order. Wait, do I not call to order? I would like to begin this work session of the Forest Grove City Council. No public comment will be taken. The council will take no formal action. And the topic tonight is the TV Highway Bus Rapid Transit Locally Preferred Alternative. And we have our Community Development Department here talking to us about that. So go ahead, Dan. Thanks for staying late.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. So as the Mayor noted, tonight's work session is really to discuss the locally preferred alternative for the TV Highway Bus Rapid Transit Project. And it's also an opportunity to discuss next steps ahead of a forthcoming request from Metro and TriMet that City Council endorse the locally preferred alternative for the project as a project partner. And so on your agenda on May 12th, there will be a resolution for formally endorsing the locally preferred alternative. And Ryan, next slide. So a little bit of background. In February, the project steering committee unanimously endorsed the locally preferred alternative for the project. And the steering committee was made up of elected officials and project stakeholders. And to give you an idea of how far back this project actually goes now, former Mayor Truax first started as the city's representative on the steering committee. Mayor Wenzel also represented the city, former Councilor Rippey, and then now Councilor Schimmel was representing the city on the steering committee. And up on the slide, it shows the representatives from the other partner jurisdictions, which is a good cross-section of not only the cities in the counties, but also some other groups that provided support to the project, including Centro Cultural and Adelante Mujeres. Next slide, please. So now that the locally preferred alternative has been endorsed by the steering committee, Metro and TriMet are asking that each project partner formally endorse the LPA by resolution. And this is a critical step. This action is needed for federal funding to advance the project to the next phase, which is called project development. Slide. So for the engineers in the room, in the audience, project development is really preliminary engineering. And it's to further define the project scope, refine the project cost, and the project construction schedule before the construction phase. And project development is required for a federal small starts program construction grant with the Federal Transit Administration. And the grant would be for a $300 million project in total, with $150 million being requested from the Federal Transit Administration and $150 million state, regional, and local match to the project, which would include potentially proceeds from the state, from the Oregon Department of Transportation, allocated by the legislature, Metro, TriMet, and then the partner cities in Washington County. And again, this is a critical step in advancing the project to the next phase and getting federal funding. So the locally preferred alternative is actually pretty simple. It simply identifies the project corridor, which is line 57 from the B Street Station terminus in Forest Grove to the Beaverton Transit Center. So it followed the same route as line 57. Please. And the locally preferred alternative also identifies the recommended bus stops, which as part of a bus rapid transit project would be called bus station. So it'd be the corridor and the bus station. So to recap the project goals, really one of the goals is to enhance the transit rider user experience with more comfortable buses with multiple entries and exits. And the multiple entries and exits would help speed up boarding and lighting, leaving the bus, the ons and offs, so that it's not at any one station for a prolonged period of time. And also improving the user experience includes upgrading the bus station with amenities including shelters, seating, lighting, real-time bus arrival information, crash receptacles, leaning rails, and bike racks. So unlike now where some bus stops have shelters, others are just a pole off on the side of the road, all of the stations would have essentially the same type of amenities for the rider. And then the bus would be a zero-emission bus, meaning less noise and cleaner. So other goals include improving safety along the corridor, including coordinating safety improvements with the City Council's adopted TV Highway Safety Improvement Plan for the area between Quince and the Cornelius boundary. This includes safer pedestrian crossings, improved lighting, and ADA compliant sidewalks and ramps. And it would also include filling in the sidewalk gaps so that each bus station has safe crossings and also sidewalks serving the state. Next slide, please. So faster, more reliable service is definitely a goal. Bikes, rather than having to be placed on the bike rack in front of the bus, which slows things down, you'd be able to bring your bike on board, similar to a Max car. Equity was a prime project goal for the project, improving service to community members, particularly reliant on transit, including children, seniors, workers, and households that don't desire to own or maintain a vehicle. And then also line 57 service would be upgraded from 15-minute service to 12-minute service. Doesn't sound like a big increase, but what that really means is there's one additional bus per hour. So it's enhanced service. Next slide, please. So in terms of the bus rapid transit station locations, there were several factors that were considered. One was providing key access to key destinations, including shopping and services, and also optimizing the station spacing so that they're on average 1/3 mile apart. And this is to provide faster service along the corridor. And then also engineering considerations were factored in, including the space for the bus to pull off the road and accommodate the boarding, and also right-of-way needs, and trying to minimize acquiring right-of-way, which increases project costs. Next slide, please. So ridership patterns and important destinations were key considerations. This map just shows the weekday ons and offs at each of the different stations, and I have a table that shows more detail about the ridership at individual stations. But this slide also shows the highest ridership stops, and the 19th and B Street station, the terminus, is one of the highest stops in the city. It's actually number 2, and I'll get into what number 1 and number 3 are in a moment. Next slide, please. And then also what was considered was the proportion of lift ramp deployments for persons using mobility devices, so that service was provided where there are a high proportion of lift deployments. Next slide. So this chart basically shows the total daily riders. So it's not ons and offs, it's just simply ridership. Ons and offs would kind of double count things. So, but this is the number of riders at given stops for winter 2024 on line 57 to Forest Grove. So 19th and B Street is the number 2 most used stop location. It's probably no surprise that the number 1 station pair, it serves the Ballatown Shopping Center, the Safeway, with 180 total daily riders. And then the number 3 stop is at Adair and U Street. And so it's kind of interesting that our highest ridership stops are on either end of line 57 in Forest Grove and almost right in the middle. It's kind of interesting. So next slide. So the proposed BRT station locations would include, there'd be 13 total stations, including station pairs, which represents about 16% of the stops along the entire route between Forest Grove and Beaverton. And it's important to note that in terms of the city's likely financial commitment to the project, it's not going to get anywhere near 16% of the local project cost for providing the upgraded service. But in terms of the 13 stops, B Street would remain. There would be a station pair at Ash Street, both on 19th Avenue and Pacific Avenue, station pair at Elm Street, a station pair serving the Ballatown Shopping Center, a station at Oak Street, where a future traffic signal is proposed, so there'd be an enhanced crossing there, and that was one of the reasons why Oak Street was selected. And then a station pair at Rose Grove and the Stonewood Center with a new enhanced pedestrian crosswalk that will actually be installed likely this summer. The final designs are in. ODOT will be installing a crossing with a rapid flashing beacon to improve safety at that location. And then also at U Street, both on Adair and Pacific Avenue, there was a station. Next slide. So this map just shows that the ridership for each of the stations and where the existing bus stops are currently located in blue and the proposed bus rapid transit station. And you can kind of get a sense of the spacing and also where stations would potentially be consolidated. Next slide, please. And then this just shows the location of the potential stations on the east side of the segment. So basically from Oak Street to U Street. Slide, please. So in terms of important destinations served, the proposed station locations consider destinations like senior facilities, new residential development, connections with GroveLink and Pacific University. And so you can see which station pairs serve which important destination. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, a project goal is spacing stations about 1/3 mile apart, and the Forest Grove stations are just about at 1/3 mile exactly. The greatest station spacing is between Elm Street and the Ballatown Shopping Center, just over 1/3 of a mile, and the closest station spacing is between the B Street terminus and the Ash Street stations, which are at about 1/4 mile apart. Slide, please. So the 19th Way station, which is the Ballatown station, would also serve the Jose Arcega Apartments, the Meadowlark Apartments, and the Hidden Pine Apartments. Next slide. The Ash Street stations would serve the eastern portion of downtown, including the Forest Grove Library, City Hall, Pacific University. The Rose Grove stations would serve the Rose Grove community, the Stonewood Shopping Center, and the Forest Place Apartments. And the U Street stations would serve the Mountain View Shopping Center, the Karen's Corner Apartments near Primetime, and would provide a Grove Lane connection, would serve a Grove Lane connection to the 24th Avenue industrial. And then so in terms of next steps, it would include City Council consideration of a resolution endorsing the locally preferred alternative on May 12th. City Council consideration of a resolution in June would follow to approve a formal intergovernmental agreement with TriMet, which would outline roles and responsibilities and commitments between TriMet and Forest Grove moving forward. The IGA will identify the city's funding commitments, including the potential use of transportation development tax funds. And in terms of the city's financial commitment, this number is kind of in flux still. The funding commitment is expected to be about no more. This is a not to exceed maximum $175,000 over the next 2 fiscal years. And it's very likely that in the IGA, most of this amount would be transferred over to the construction phase, not project development, with a more modest commitment for project development in FY 26-27, probably more on the order of $75,000, with $175,000 for construction. And again, this fund source is transportation development tax eligible. And in addition to the direct funding commitment from the city, the IGA will also identify any in-kind support for reviewing plans. The city is also a permitting authority because we own the right-of-way west of Quinn Street, so we have a role in permitting, and the city will be reimbursed for any permitting costs through the project. So that concludes the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Council President Valenzuela.
Yes. Thank you so much for the presentation. Seems like we've been waiting for this for a long time. I'm concerned about the funding. There's some federal funding that is needed for this project. Is it already where it needs to be, or is there a danger that we will not have access to that fund?
So funding is always uncertain, and it really depends on the competitiveness of the application that's submitted to the Federal Transit Authority. And that's why it's really critical to have all the partners agree to the locally preferred alternative. TriMet and Metro are working with the legislature to get funding allocated through the transportation package being considered by the legislature. In terms of federal funding, no one really knows exactly how things might unfold, but it's important just to kind of keep things moving forward because things could change in 2020 in the midterms. And in 2020, was it 6? Would be the midterm election, so which is coming up, and so that could have a bearing on how successful the project is.
Thank you.
Councilor Falconer.
I've got some, I wonder if it seems like we're not there yet in terms of being able to spell out specifically, maybe I'll just cut to I'm very concerned about the gaps. That's my biggest concern because when we reduce stops, even though in between the stops, there's only, a third of a mile in most cases, if you look along the route, and I take this bus quite a bit, I have actually for a very long time, even before I moved to Forest Grove. And I see a lot of the riders with me, they're getting off, you saw the dots are very consistent. It's a very, very popular, and it's very popular for folks making local trips. Unlike me, I take it all the way from B Street all the way to the MAX station when I'm riding. Except for recently when I needed to get off my bus to go to the middle school. And so I had the opportunity, the challenge, to walk that section of that grassy section where the shoulder is very narrow on between U Street and the Ford dealership. It's horrible, and I have a video that I can't share with you because it was too big to email, but I'll take care of that. But it's a frightening experience for a pedestrian, especially someone I've had this experience before where I have a small child either strapped to my chest or in a stroller, or I'm on a bike. And you just have no other choice but to walk along the side of a busy highway. And so even though stops are a third of a mile apart, sometimes where there's not a safe intersection, maybe the crosswalk, even though every intersection, unless marked, is a crosswalk, We don't stripe all of our crosswalks, all of our intersections as such, and so people don't feel comfortable crossing necessarily. And so even though the stop might be like, sort of a mile, you might actually have to double your distance to get to the right stop because you're going in the opposite direction. So that's a long-winded way of prefacing my question, which is, when are we going to know how much, where those gaps are actually going to get filled, and how much of those gaps are going to get filled? How much can we expect in terms of pedestrian safety improvements, not just at the stations themselves, but actually?
That's a great question, and the project is committed to filling in the gaps when construction occurs, so that there are safe connections to all of the stations. I will say that some of those gaps would likely be filled before construction happens, and the reason I say that is that the city has a safe routes to school grant to improve some of that connection there by the Ford dealership. Right now, there's just basically an ADA ramp and a pole for the bus stop, and
then a drop off.
And so that will be fixed. And there's been a congressional earmark to look at installing a traffic signal at U and Adair, and likely as part of that, there would be a marked crosswalk with a beacon on at U and Pacific, the South Lake, East Lake. So it's very likely that some of these improvements will happen really during the project development phase and ahead of the construction phase. And so, but that is a priority to fill those gaps and as quickly as possible as funding allows.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Do you have a question? Okay, Councilor Schimmel.
Well, in all fairness, Dan, you should have called me to the other seat as the council liaison to this committee. So I apologize that I didn't take my chair. But thanks for walking us through the detail. That was helpful. I'm glad you could do that. Just as the liaison in the short period I was on the committee, I'll just want to maybe supplement what Dan has shared and share my reservations or concerns, and as well as the trade-offs. So I generally support the LPA at this point because it's early enough where changes can be made later to address those concerns. The general concept or principle around the rapid was I had to wrestle with versus the accessibility and equity interest. You can only get more rapid with fewer stops. So that was hard to wrestle with. But I do believe that we need to demonstrate our local and regional commitment. So commitment by the city, by Metro, to the state, to the federal government that we want this project. And there's uncertainty about the federal government and even at the state, but moving forward demonstrates our commitment. The part that I think we need to that I on the committee will have to press on in terms of accountability is ensuring the accessibility between the stops before anything goes live. That's if the stops are the stops or the stations as they are. We absolutely need that safe accessibility between us, continuous sidewalks, safe pathways, and the only caveat in terms of the stations that are selected today is, we're talking about construction maybe 3-4 years out. What are the development plans between now and then in terms of housing? And the only stop eliminated that I have a question mark on is the Maple Street and Pacific. I know in Oak there's all those new developments, the new housings that exist, but there's prospective housing developments at Maple, both north and south. So depending on what the outlook of those in the next 3 to 4 years, that might be the trade-off we deliberate, and I take some input into say, hey, we want to trade Maple or Oak for Maple. The other stops, I just count. would hold them accountable to the safety accessibility between them. That's how I wanted to supplement that and be willing to answer any questions.
Mayor, can I just real quickly add, as part of the project development phase, TriMet will be forming several committees. There will be a citizen advisory committee that's going to provide more input into the project design, and there will be a request for an elected representative from the partner jurisdictions to participate in that process too. So there will definitely be more opportunity to weigh in on the details of the project.
Any other questions, concerns? I mean, I think, my colleagues have summarized it well. It's really difficult for me. I speaking to community members who use line 57, that's all we have. And to feel like we're losing stops and we're losing accessibility. And I understand the trade-off is going to speed it up, but I don't know if our users, like Councilor Falconer was saying, like they use it to get around Forest Grove and have that convenience of hopping on the bus to go get some ice cream or go get dinner and
Groceries.
get groceries and come
Imagine
back.
carrying groceries for
For
2/3 of a mile.
2/3 of a mile. Exactly. Like, and that's like my concern too, is that the furthest distance between the proposed stops is it Elm Street and Safeway? So that's over 1/3 of a mile just from stop to stop. Like that's not talking about getting from your house, right? So with carrying those things, and if you have kids, so I guess it just is like really rough for me that I feel like, yeah, I want to be a regional partner. I understand this project, and there's definitely safety issues, but what do we say to our community? Like, what is our community getting? For this financial investment, for like a little bit less convenience. And I'm just concerned.
Do you mind if I jump in there for you? Give it a shot.
My guess, yes, please.
It's like, save me.
Well, the one thing I forgot to I guess maybe it's an appeal is explore GroveLink as a way to compensate for what's lost. I think to answer your question about what's gained is the safety aspect. We're filling in the absence of safe sidewalks, and these stations are gonna resemble a MAC station, so they're gonna be elevated, safer. So I think the improvement is the accessibility between the sidewalks that are missing and the safety of the stations themselves. That's the gives, and we obviously lose the stops in between, but can GroveLink compensate for that? I don't know.
That could potentially be an option. The other thing too is that early on it was really important to keep the project costs to $300 million or less. And early on, there was a lot of discussion about the project, and if all of the stations were to remain, the cost would exceed what could be funded through the Small Starts grant, which prompted a discussion about phasing the project, and which no one on the steering committee supported. It was either all of the line 57 or nothing, and so that's where some of those hard decisions were starting to be discussed, trying to keep the project cost and still meet the objective.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay. So do we need to have a consensus right now, or is it going to come to council anyway?
It's really just, is there consensus to bring the LPA to the council on May 12th for further consideration?
Is there consensus to bring it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Sounds good. Okay,
Thank
great.
you, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Brian. I'm going to adjourn this work session. Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Forest Grove City Council at 7:07. Will our city recorder please call roll?
Counselor Gustafson,
Absent.
Council President Valenzuela,
Here.
Counselor Schimmel,
Here.
Counselor Falconer. Here. Counselor Martinez. Here. Counselor Marshall.
Here.
Mayor Wenzel.
Here, Forest Grove City Council meetings are located on the land of the Tualatin Kalapuas, who call themselves the Atfalati. They are now part of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde. Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Testing. We got a new microphone. It's very exciting. Really, it's the small things or the big things. Okay, we're going to do small business proclamation. Whereas America's strongest economic growth in almost 40 years has been driven by the resilience of our small business that, despite a worldwide pandemic, continue to pioneer innovative solutions to our country's greatest challenges and create opportunities for families and workers. And whereas small businesses remain the heartbeat of our communities and the American economy, employing more than half of our nation's workers, inventing and innovating to launch new technologies and create new American-led industries, enriching our main streets, making parts and products in America to fuel our supply chains, and building our nation's infrastructure. And whereas the City of Forest Grove recognizes the values, the dedication, and entrepreneurial spirit of small businesses that are the cornerstone of our local and state economy. And whereas the City of Forest Grove supports and joins in this national effort to recognize and support small businesses to ensure that our community remains as vibrant tomorrow as they are today. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Forest Grove does hereby proclaim May 4th through May 10th as Small Business Week in Forest Grove, Oregon, and urges all citizens to acknowledge and celebrate the achievements made by small businesses locally and nationally. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item B on our agenda, public comment. Time provided for anyone wishing to speak to City Council on an item not on the agenda or on the agenda but not scheduled for a public hearing. Comments are limited to 2 minutes unless additional time is granted by the presiding officer. The public comment period shall not exceed 30 minutes unless a majority of councilors present vote to extend the time. Zoom attendees may use the raise hand feature to be called on. Okay, we will start with Mr. Dale Feek. Mr. Feek, I'm going to hold you to your time tonight because we have other people wishing to speak. Just as a warning.
Glad you told me ahead of time. I'll not waste my time asking for an extra minute.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready, or do you want to wait for him to?
Mayor Wenzel and councilors, I moved to Forest Grove in 1966 to be a fifth grade teacher at Joseph Gale, and I've been here ever since. Great place to live, work. 4 comments, 15, 30 seconds each maybe. You have before you 2 emails I sent to you, but also to the Washington County Commissioners. And I'd encourage you to read them in detail. I sent them by email, maybe a link, but also even hard copy now. The first one is titled Bob Terry, Catherine Harrington, Washington County Chair, Pamplin Statements, and it's when they ran against either county commissioners. Very enlightening. Please take a look at that. It has to do with voter integrity in the county, which we have very good voter integrity, and Bob Terry disagrees, and I disagree with him, as well as a lot of other people do. The second one is what I sent to you about a letter to the editor from Lisa Stiller related to the book I gave to most of you, or the ones that you accepted the book, Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. And the most important thing, and I sent this to newspaper people, particularly Teresa Bottomley of the Oregonian and their reporters. Number 10 of the lessons or actions believe in truth. And our current administration does not believe in truth. And so it's very important to stick to truth and have good journalists that will search for truth and report truth. So please read that in detail also. Only 15 seconds. Crane Data Center, I questioned their wetland stuff, and I'll give more back to you. Also, the counselor's not here. Donna, I really appreciate what she does. I'd really like you two to resolve any issues. The only minority destroying this country is our billionaires, and she's been on the front page of the News Times. I highly respect what she's doing. Try to save our democracy. Thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. Okay, Michael Pearl.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Michael Peralt, 3254 Ridgepoint Drive here in Forest Grove. I want to draw the attention of the city government and the population of Forest Grove to the Remembrance Ruck and Food Drive this coming Saturday, May 3rd. A rucksack is the military term for a backpack. A ruck march is a march while carrying your ruck, hopefully in this case, full of non-perishable food. It's a 5-mile hike starting and ending at the Armory. This is being run by the same unit that we gave an elaborate send-off to, whose troops are now serving our nation in Syria and Iraq, whose families are back here. We've been staying in touch with them. Some of them have needed some assistance. All the donations that will be given and people carrying their food items in their rucksacks will support the St. Vincent de Paul local food bank. I have put outside on the table a series of flyers that announce this, that provide all of the information. We're going to start at the Armory, march 5 miles, and then finish up back at the Armory. There'll also be some events going on there. So thank you all very much. Please let all your constituents know, and let's get some support for these folks.
Great, thank you. Sir. Dale Thaler.
I'm back. Mayor Wenzel, city council members, city staff, and Forest Grove citizens. My name is Dale Thaler, and I live at 2540 12th Avenue here in Forest Grove. I'm currently the commander of Forest Grove's American Legion Post 2. Technically, the United States has not been at war since World War II. However, we have seen the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the global war on terror, Afghanistan, Iraq, and a number of other conflicts that Congress calls authorizations for use of force. In fact, in the nearly 250-year history of the United States, we have been at peace for a grand total of less than 20 years. Though our nation has had less than 12 years of declared war, there have been over 230 years when our nation has called upon her service members to go who knows where with little or no notice to protect our interests, safety, and freedom. Some pay the ultimate sacrifice. Some serve unscathed. Many return injured, both inside and outside. For a quarter millennium, even before our nation's birth, everyday citizens have stepped up to serve for all, I am very proud of the fact that we have had an all-volunteer armed forces for the past 50 years. We must never forget their bravery, valor, struggle, and sacrifice, whatever time and which mission they were tasked to undertake. Whether we call them a soldier, sailor, Marine, Coastie, or Guardian, thanks, Space Force, we owe them a debt of gratitude and remembrance. 4 weeks from today, the American Legion will once again be presenting a Memorial Day observance at the Forest View Cemetery from 11 a.m. to noon. I invite you to come show your gratitude for those who lie in rest after serving their great nation, but also to those who have served and are still among the living. It has always been important that a veteran knows someone appreciates everything he or she went through for duty, honor, and country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Michael I'm having a hard time reading your last name. I'm sorry. Eshe. Thank you.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Michael Eshte, 14489 Southwest Arabian Drive, Beaverton, Oregon. Pleased to be out here in Forest Grove. And I'm coming out here this afternoon because I want to share with you, first of all, thank you for what you're doing out here in Forest Grove. And I want to take this time to make sure that you know what you're doing behind the scenes. But in August, well, actually 1 year ago this week, there was a group of people that met from Forest Grove at the 2nd Battalion, 218th Field Artillery in Forest Grove and said, how can we support you? You're getting ready to deploy. How do we deploy? And we thought, we'll get a band, we'll get a barbecue, we'll get some people together. And this retired group, who is largely out of Forest Grove, said, we can do that. So volunteers got together, veterans, and they showed the younger people what it's like to be sent off properly. But the part that I don't think got back to you, and you really need to hear this, is Forest Grove became the benchmark of how you say, thank you for your service, men and women of the 218th, and we appreciate you. And this is what it looks like when men and women go off to serve their country and their state in an appropriate manner. And between the partnership of the veterans, the retirees, the American Legion, and everybody that came together, there was an initial request, can you feed 600 people? And Denise Brabers over at Pacific and the president over there, along with the volunteers of Forest Grove, said, we can do that. And they said, what about 800? And I recognized some faces that were there. Before it was done, the count was over 1,600 people came to that luncheon last August. 1,600 people at Pacific University. And it didn't have a paid staff. They were volunteers that came out of the American Legion and the veterans community of Forest Grove, and they went out and served. And now the benchmark, I got a phone call in February saying, could you help us do what you guys did out in Forest Grove? And I'm like, yeah, move to Forest Grove. And that was a pleasurable thing to be able to say. And I want to just say thank you for what you're doing. You're making a difference with the veterans community and our National Guard. And we can tell that you look after them. And we're really appreciative of your efforts. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And thank you to the Legion for doing all that. Our next public comment is Carol Allen.
Hi.
Hello.
Carol Ellery. And I've lived in Oregon for 45 years. I want you to know when I came to Oregon, it's one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. We were like the Beverly Hillbillies. We came down in a step van and we came here to live with 3 children. And we were the most miserable people on the planet Earth. And when this happened, what happened next was, of course, I started babysitting. And one woman would come to my house and she was always happy. And I says, how can you always be happy? What is it about you that makes you so happy? Because I was as miserable as could be. I was so unhappy. I had a very rough marriage. We were struggling very, very hard. We were poor. I mean, everything you can think of. But she led me to the Lord Jesus Christ. When she did that, that made a difference in my life. All of a sudden, everything I started seeing from a better view, and life started to change. And so I want to read something out of John 3:16-18. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe in him is condemned already, because he does not believe in the name of Jesus, the only Son of God. I want you to know on Thursday at National Day of Prayer is going to happen. We have at 12 noon at the Flag, we're going to be praying. Also, Old Town at 6 p.m., we're going to be praying. Want to invite you. National Day of Prayer has been recognized since 1978. I mean, not the 1748, there it is. And it has been for the last 20 years, every president, even Tina Kotek, has accepted it. And I hope to see you guys come to it. We would love to have you there. Again, it's at the Flagpole at 12 noon and at Washington, at Old Town at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else in the audience who would like to provide public comment? Okay, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to provide public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to item C on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Items under the consent agenda are considered routine and will all be adopted with a single motion without separate discussion. Counselors who wish to remove an item from the consent agenda may do so prior to the motion. Any item or items removed will be discussed and acted upon following the approval of the remaining items. What is the wish of the council?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. The consent agenda was moved by Council President Valenzuela and seconded by Councilor Marshall. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved with a vote of 6-0. Item D, additions or deletions. City Manager, do you have any additions or deletions?
No additions or deletions. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Counselors, any additions or deletions? Seeing none. Okay, we're going to move on to our presentations for the night. Our first, the council will hold questions until the end of each presentation. A 2-minute reminder will be given to the presenter to conclude remarks. Our first presentation is our farmers market update. And it's Jody Monroy from Adelante Mujeres, Market Access Manager. Hi. Hello. Yeah. Welcome. So I was gonna say, are you new to Adelante?
Yes, my name is Jody Monroy. I'm new to Adelante Mujeres. Hi, everyone.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
If anybody knew who Sage was before, I'm taking over the position that was Sage's. We have had a lot of new staff in our department specifically, and a lot of restructuring. So perhaps what Sage used to do, I won't do, and I might do things that she didn't do. But we've had a lot of changes. I am definitely not new to markets, though. That is for sure. I grew up in Sheridan, and we grew up selling at the Hillsborough Farmers Market hazelnuts and honey, and from there, I think my first professional market experience was that I helped lead the Beaverton Farmers Market, which is a huge market. The city of Beaverton at that point sort of recruited me to help them start a immigrant refugee entrepreneurship market called the Beaverton Night Market that has been widely successful. That's from there. So I'm not doing any of those things anymore. Now I'm in Adelante Mujeres, and I'm really excited to be leading their market access program, which includes the farmers markets and the retail incubator space Casa Cui, and hopefully future Casa Cuis. And today I'm here to talk about the farmers market. So I'm not going to read this. I assume that you all can see it on your screen. Is that accurate? Okay. So in 2024, we saw a greater crowd count than previous years, and truth be told, I've never actually been to the Forest Grove Farmers Market. When I found out that I had the job at Adelante Mujeres, it was right before the Dia de Muertos, the final market day, and I was like super excited to go, and then it rained that day like heavily, and I was like, no, I'm not going, which is like really typical of markets. But so I'm excited to see what I have learned since I've started is that the Forest Grove Farmers Market, so Adelante Mujeres runs the Cornelius Farmers Market and the Forest Grove Farmers Market. Forest Grove Farmers Market is very well rooted. in the community. There are a lot of people excited for it, involved in it, and impacted mostly positively by it. And I'm excited to continue to deepen those relationships and make it bigger and better. Although that sounds strange because you don't always have to make everything bigger and better. But this year our market will be bigger. So we had an increase of attendance, about 30,000 people in last year. So that's super exciting. We're expanding this year, so we'll see an increase. We'll see an increase again in attendance. I'm certain of that. Our special events are a real attraction, which we try to sort of plan it in the later part of the season, when it kind of like winds down. Summer, everybody wants to go to markets, but in the fall, you have to like kind of bring them out a little bit more. Next slide. Our kids pop activities are always fun. It's a good time to bring families out. Entertainment. These are what we call in the market world, these are what we call the amenities. The amenities are stuff that, we pay for, but they attract people to the market and they keep them bringing back. Our amenities are growing. We're having more music this year. We had more last year. A larger variety of entertainment. We love the partnership with the Forest Grove, the Arts Commission. Yes, for the Festival of the Arts. Yeah, they're great to work with, and they bring a lot of people and a lot of excitement and a lot of energy out. Our first market day, by the way, is next Wednesday, May 7th, so everybody should have it on their calendars. We're having our first Wednesday Festival of the Arts and the Artisans in the Grove Market, so it'll be a good time. Next slide. So I don't have anything in here in terms of growth of sales, but this was reported by vendors, the sales for last season of the farmers market, and it's timely in the declaration that you made for small business, because markets are championed, farmers markets and all markets, as being a really low barrier incubator space for small businesses and beginning businesses, and especially if for folks who are non-English speaking, really a great partnership with Adelante Mujeres to have us leading this endeavor, because we can provide, a lot of barrier navigation to folks. Another big part of our markets are our food access programs, and because I'm new to the market and haven't really, I'm still kind of in the world of like, what is this? Who pays for this? How do we get this? And what do we do all this? But we have a ton of food access programs, which are available to the public in general. There's, the EBT and then the SNAP match. And then there are some that are available to participants of our programs, like our Produce RX, Senior, Farm Direct, WIC Pro. There's a ton of them. And so this is the, economic impact of that at our market. And this is the fun part. So this is our first Wednesday map. Sort of the top part of the T is 21st, and then the bottom part is Main Street, and the very bottom is Pacific. We are going to be having our festival stage in the section between A Street. Tell me if I'm saying this wrong. A Street and Main Street on 21st, in front of like all the like restaurants and like the brew area. That's our festival stage. Artisans in the Grove are still going to be on the other side of Main Street on 21st. And in addition to that, every other week that is not our festival week, we will be having vendors on 21st between Main and College Avenue. So we are slightly growing this year and expect that to continue. There's a lot of interest. We for I think the first time we've turned away vendors. We've turned away vendors before if their product isn't interesting, but this is the first time we're doing it because we don't have space. These are our events planned for this year. It would be great if you want to take a picture and show up at all the events. I don't know if y'all go to the market regularly every Wednesday, but these are our special events this year. And you can see that a lot of them are kind of in the fall to try to bring out more customers when it might be raining and might be not as exciting. And these are so far, again, I'm new and I don't know all of the players in the game, but this is who I've identified as the people who are really invested in the market and the folks the folks that we collaborate with a lot. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to read the list, but it's an extensive collaboration, and it's what makes the market so rooted, and it's what makes for a good market, to be honest. If you have a market where you are just, leading it without collaborations, it doesn't that's what brings out the people. That's what brings out the energy and the vibe. So I mean, I'm grateful for all of this and all the other people who are going to be participating in the future. These are our challenges. So the logistics of the market are challenging. The logistics of any market are challenging. We had a meeting with the city manager maybe about 2 weeks ago, and he told us about I think it's called the Glow Up. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're very excited to be getting another OtterBox, I think is what they call it, another electrical box, because electricity is always a struggle, especially on Main Street. We continue to troubleshoot alongside with the city and the city club. The lighting, especially in the fall when it starts to get dark, lighting is an issue. Garbage is always, the logistics are troublesome. The staffing and the budget is always a struggle. Being an incubator space, serving the whole community, but with a primary focus on the Latino community, it takes more time. It takes more resources to help folks navigate different processes, and so ensuring that we have well-trained staff that's bilingual and competent in their roles, ensuring that we have the resources available to support these small businesses and growing and being successful at the market, understanding what they need to be able to do that is all really important part of the role of any market management and market staff. So those are always big challenges. And then, of course, being on a main street alongside a ton of other businesses, the relationships with those businesses and the interactions and sort of collaborations between those are also really important. So, and they're challenges, not in a bad way, but I mean, they're opportunities. I should have said that. But they can be challenging for sure. I mean, I remember this one market I did this one year, and it was in a downtown. We'd moved it from one place to the next, and all of the businesses were just like, no. And at the end of the market, some of them were still like, no, that wasn't very great. But it just takes a lot of work to, have those conversations, to hear people out. I know you had sent me an email asking this very question about how are we navigating the relationships with the Main Street businesses. It's so tricky, Bringing an event and a bunch of people to a space is a great opportunity for a business that's already there, and folks can successfully. It takes a lot of trial and error, a lot of innovation, a lot of support, a lot of ideas to feel like you're successful. Every business owner is different. Everybody has a different mindset. Everybody has a different style. Everybody has different goals and outcomes. Some people don't want to be bothered at all. Some people are like, yeah, let's break the doors open. So like everybody's different, and there's going to be people who are just not really happy with it there ever, and that's okay. And as long as there is a mutual understanding of, we want to be friendly with you, like how do we do that? And then there are folks who are looking for ways to collaborate more and trying to make those opportunities happen as well. And I think that's all of the information I have. There's my name and my contact phone number. Does anybody have any questions?
Thanks, Jody. Any questions? Counselor Schimmel.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jody. I appreciate. Welcome to Forest Grove. Welcome to the market. I have no doubt you're going to bring a fresh spirit to the market, and thanks for the work you're doing with the local business owners. I just suspect with the Glow Up project, when that's finished, that's going to provide both the market and business owners some space on that sidewalk to really spread out. So, yeah, I'll look forward to participating in the market and seeing how that relationship works out. But thanks for investing in it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be really good energy this year.
Well, I think you have really good energy. So like I'm excited.
Just love
I mean
markets.
the market's super fun. I go to the market quite often and I work a booth on the first Wednesday with the police chief, but like you have a really good energy. Like your aura is like yellow, yellow, yellow. So which is great. So it's good for Forest Grove and I think it's really exciting too and I like that the first step, I think there is some times like a little challenge is with small businesses on Main Street, but like just that you're going to meet that and say, hey, let's create a relationship first. Let's have discussions and let's, be innovative, like how we can, maybe restructure some things and work it out so that we can all be successful because there is plenty of capacity. I mean, it's a win. The market brings thousands of people downtown. And so it's really like, how do we all tap into that so we all are successful? So I look forward to working with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next report is from our Economic Development Commission and Economic Development Annual Reports.
Mayor, Council, staff, thank you for entertaining our report. I wanted to make a quick, completely unrelated comment that I really appreciate of all the jurisdictions I work with as a commercial real estate broker. This city and doing the Pledge of Allegiance and endorsing the VFW is absolutely amazing because I don't see that in any other jurisdiction, which is why I love working with Forest Grove.
Thank
So
you.
I just wanted to say that.
You can keep saying more nice things too. I mean, I'm just like
have all the time in the world.
The night's
right,
early.
like,
The
I'm
night's
like,
early.
we're here for it. We're here for it.
The night's early. Okay, so I'm getting older, so I've got to put these on. So, Economic Development Commission, I've been on this commission for a long time. The purpose of this commission is to help work with councilors, mayor, in making strategic decisions on trying to implement further economic development and growth in the city of Forest Grove, and to help adopt city council adopted goals and objectives. The EDC advises and makes recommendations to the city on economic development policy and issues that support advancing that economic prosperity and development, and working with other businesses in the area to try and further their growth as well. In 2024, the updated Economic Development Opportunities Analysis, the EOA, advised Urban Renewal Agency, which again, we're very happy to help advise City Council and the members with the URA on that. Having worked a lot over the last probably 20 years with what's now Prosper Portland, and Jeff King, the previous predecessor to Miles, did a lot of work in trying to foster developing that URA that's in some respects similar to Prosper Oregon, to try and further the goals and objectives of the growth of Forest Grove. Offered input into the city's tourism efforts, working in conjunction with Washington County Tourism and Forest Grove Tourism, and trying to foster partnerships regarding that. Serve on the city's Visioning Steering Committee and receive updates on the Transportation System Plan. In 2025, my excitement is just exuberant, doing the Economic Development Strategic Plan for the third time. So we'll be working on that to incorporate also city goals, council goals. Begin working on visioning action items. Advise the Urban Renewal Agency on funding the building development program and the grants that we've discussed a lot in the earlier part of this year and the end of last year to help, again, try and foster more development. Review and make recommendations on the city's tourism marketing efforts to try and make sure we get the better bang for our buck, make sure the money's not wasted. Continue to serve as a conduit for information between city and businesses. And I'm done.
Well, thanks, Tim. And So that's the work that the Economic Development Commission's been doing last year, and what we plan for this year. The big lift is going to be the Economic Development Strategic Plan update. The last one was adopted by Council with Resolution 2019-42, and it's a council goal for 2025 to update. Next slide, please. In the 2019 plan goals, support industrial and commercial business growth and retention, or support small businesses and their development and retention, expand the economic impact of tourism, and then further partnerships, outreach, and equity efforts. And these were the Forest Grove economic indicators highlighted in the plan: population and growth rate, unemployment rate, basic statistics that you can chart that tell you if your plan's working. Why we're updating it now, besides being a council goal, is we recently updated the economic opportunities analysis. There's a lot of data in there that we can go through and help educate the EDC and help their decision-making process. Of course, the city's visioning process is going to have some new ideas for the way the city should grow in the next 20 years. So there's potential for some new plan goals. There's changing some of the metrics as a result of the visioning. There's changing business landscape. We have land supply issues or constraints, and really exciting public and private investments going on in downtown. So it's a really opportune time to take a look at it. Also, a lot of the goals in the plan were short-term, 2 years, and it's been 6 years. So it's time to come up with some new short-term goals. Thank you. And then this is the timeline we're proposing. Council's going to approve the economic opportunities analysis, hopefully, and adopt the visioning plan this summer. Summer and fall, the EDC will begin working with a consultant. We'll start with a SWOT analysis and develop an action plan. We'll come back for a council work session in the winter, and then winter, spring, approve the revised economic strategic plan. Yes, Mayor.
I got a question. With the strategic plan, is that going to be worked on by the whole Economic Development Commission, or are you guys going to have a sub? Because how many do you have on that committee? Did we get it down to 6?
This is a trick question.
We're supposed to have. Go ahead, Miles.
Yeah,
It is.
I'm not sure off the top of my head how many are listed in the bylaws. We have about 9 members right now.
Oh.
That's
So we have lots of vacancies. We have five
some vacancies, and we do have some people who are retiring from their day jobs this summer who've told me that they're going to be stepping off this summer.
So it's even going to get smaller.
There's the potential for that, but we are recruiting and trying to add new members.
Okay. Then it's not too large. Because at first I was thinking it was going to be too large of a group to work, but it's not too large of a group. With that. Oh my.
Oh.
The development director.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it.
Before that.
I bet. I can imagine. Any other questions? Councilor Schimmel.
Mayor. And thank you both. Normally I send my questions out in advance, but you two seem pretty sharp. I'll give it a shot here. The first is, I'm always curious. I have the honor of serving as the liaison there, so I've had a few meetings under my belt, but just always curious how underutilized you might feel in terms of the work product you're asked to do, or the voices you lend us. Whether you feel heard, or is there in some way you're underutilized given the business talent that you have there? Maybe Tim, you can answer.
I'm going to do this as a sandwich. So the good thing is that throughout our visioning, throughout of our strategic planning that we've done the last several iterations, it's been very supportive with City Council. Of the many times in the last, I've been on this commission for like 15 years, but Faces have changed, and I could probably speak for most of the commission that we feel fairly supported. I think there was a time when the previous mayor and city council was here, and we were discussing different comprehensive plans and how to deal with all the pot shops that were coming around. That was, I mean, how many pot shops does Forest Grove really need? And so that we felt that we were not heard, but we understood that it was about money. I'm just being honest. The other positive is that with every change in leadership, there's always an opportunity to do more and do better, and to work with the businesses, especially after COVID. I hate using COVID as a benchmark, but after COVID, I think things were going forward and doing better. Businesses were learning how to adapt and how to be better and how to do things more efficiently, and supporting small businesses, not necessarily supporting big chains. So I think that I've seen a lot of city council members really support that and support the businesses there too.
Thank you. And then just one other request, given the work plan, particularly in the second half of the year, we need a fully capable, loaded EDC. In the next meeting, please consider what core business or professional competencies we need to recruit for, that we can make that appeal out to the public, or invite your group to recruit as well.
Excuse me. I think our commission is a lot different than many other commissions because we're segmented for each commissioner by industry, whether it's manufacturing, small business, retail, which really adds to what specific needs each of those industries need. And so we reach out in accordance with those specific industry needs so that they're equally represented and not, for lack of a better term, disenfranchised.
Councillor Faulkner.
Can I ask you a follow-up question to your very last point there? I haven't looked at it in a few months, but do you feel like, I mean, right now it seems like the numbers are, we're not at capacity. We're looking at maybe even losing a few more members on your commission. I'm wondering if, when you look at the requirements for consideration for the application to be on if you could maybe think, you don't have to answer now, but there might be some gaps. There might be some folks who have talents that could lend themselves to your work and be very helpful. I'm not remembering exactly what that list is, but I'm thinking, there might be some public policy, strategic planning, type folks out there who have maybe some talents that you all could use. And it might be helpful to just, widen that recruiting pool a little bit as well.
So beyond the strategic plan,
Just the work generally I think we've got a lot of strategic planning type work. I think if you look at the council's goals for the next, 2 to 3 years, they're pretty heavy on planning. And so I'm just sort of thinking long-term, the commission, if you can use an extra set of hands, maybe that's just something to consider.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. Thank you, gentlemen. Have
Absolutely.
a nice night.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
We are now moving on to item F, which is public hearings, ordinances, and resolutions. Ordinance 2025-01, amending the Forest Grove Comprehensive Plan to replace the city's 2019 Economic Opportunities Analysis with the 2020, I guess I don't have to read all of this. So I'm going to welcome Dan to the front and then maybe Brian as well. Oh, wait, I need to read it. It's actually, I need to read this. Sorry.
You have, a preamble.
Yeah, I forgot that I had the whole script in blue. I will now open the public hearing for the first reading of ordinance 2025-01, amending the Forest Grove Comprehensive Plan to replace the city's 2019 Economic Opportunities Analysis, or EOA, with the recently completed 2025 EOA update, and to add the 2025 EOA update as a comprehensive plan appendix. Adoption of an ordinance is legislative action by the City Council. Under the Council's rules, the City Council must hold 2 readings of the ordinance prior to final adoption. After the first reading tonight, the City Council will consider a motion to adopt the ordinance for first reading and to continue this public hearing to the May 12th City Council meeting for a second reading. Senior Planner Dan Reardon will now present the staff report and recommendation for City Council's consideration.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Dan Reardon, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. And I'll apologize in advance that a lot of this will be repetitive since you held a work session on the EOA updates at your last meeting on April 14th. But it's important to get this information in the record. So to start off, tonight's public hearing is an opportunity to hear any public comments on the 2025 Economic Opportunities Analysis Update, and also provides an opportunity for consideration of first reading of the ordinance. And as the mayor mentioned, adoption of the ordinance will add the 2025 update to the comprehensive plan as a plan appendix. So I'm pleased to say that this item, as alluded to in the prior presentation from the Economic Development Commission, is related to a City Council goal. City Council adopted goal objective 1.2 for 2025 to update and adopt an EOA for the city. And I'm pleased to say that the EOA update is complete and ready for adoption. And since the last EOA was updated in 2019, there's been considerable interest in the use of industrial land for data centers. And that's really what precipitated the need to take another look at the EOA, since it was not captured in the last EOA update. Next slide. So as general background, an EOA identifies local economic goals as well as target industries based on local competitive advantages and economic advantages specifically for Forest Grove. In addition, it also identifies economic trends and employment growth for 5 years and 20 years out. And an EOA also assesses the amount of land zoned for employment uses, which includes both commercial and industrial lands, that is vacant or partially vacant. And the EOA balances the supply with the forecasted demand for the 5-year and 20-year planning time horizon. And basically, an EOA is simply just a technical exercise to reconcile what estimated growth is against how much land is available for employment uses. But it's important to know that an EOA is required under states' land use planning laws. It's related to Oregon's statewide land use planning Goal 9 related to economic development. The purpose of Goal 9 is to ensure that there are adequate opportunities for a variety of economic opportunities throughout the state that are vital to the health, welfare, and importantly, prosperity of Oregon's residents. Goal 9 is implemented through the Oregon Administrative Rules, and the rules provide specific methodologies for preparing an EOA. And if an accepted approach is used, the results of the EOA are not vulnerable to challenge or appeal and provide a sound factual basis for making decisions related to the zoning of land. Slide. So it's considered to be best practices to update the EOA every 5 years. As I mentioned, the last EOA was adopted in 2019. Again, this was before the considerable interest in locating data centers in Forest Grove and the Forest Grove area due to local advantages, including proximity to undersea fiber optic cables serving Asia. And this was also before the current interest at the federal level for reshoring manufacturing. However, it's important to note, of course, that how such efforts may affect the local economy remain uncertain at this time. So the EOA includes 3 forecast growth scenarios, and we talked a little bit about this at your work session on April 14th. Scenario 1 is related to one of the accepted state approaches for preparing an EOA. It's considered to be a safe harbor approach that is not subject to being vulnerable to a challenge, and it's based on the Oregon Employment Department regional forecast. Under Scenario 1, employment growth is projected to increase about 1.3% per year, which translates into a job increase of about 2,400 jobs over the next 20 years. And this is the recommended scenario from the Planning Commission to move forward with. Scenario 2 is based on Metro's Urban Growth Report and has a very modest growth rate of 0.3%, which would increase in a 589 increase in jobs over the next 20 years. This scenario was rejected by the Economic Development Commission, which served as the technical advisory committee for the project. So again, it was rejected by the Economic Development Commission. Scenario 3 is a more robust, optimistic employment forecast with input from the Technical Advisory Committee, the Economic Development Commission. It basically recognizes the policy could have a beneficial impact on employment growth through implementation of the Economic Development Strategic Plan, for instance, but it's not based on one of the approaches under the Oregon Administrative Rules, so it's not an accepted methodology. But that scenario 3 results in a 1.9% growth rate, or about an increase of 3,800 new jobs during the next 20 years. Slide. So this table, which is in the EOA, shows what the demand is, the estimated demand under each of the scenario for different types of employment land uses, from office, institutional, which would be civic, education, cultural institutions, healthcare, as well as flex space, your general industrial, warehousing, and retail. And as you can see, the demand across all scenarios is distributed pretty well across all of the different land use sectors. And the total amount of demand ranges from about 235 acres on the high end to 32 acres on the low end for employment. And scenario 1 falls right kind of in the middle at 140. So this table shows the reconciliation, again, the technical exercise of balancing demand by need. And the red on this chart shows where, based on the amount of land zoned for employment land versus the demand, where there's a surplus. So anything identified in red shows a surplus. So what this is basically saying is that right now, based on the estimated growth, under all 3 scenarios for industrial development, there's an oversupply of land zoned for industrial use. And that brings into question different policies about whether land should be banked long-term for industrial use or potentially redesignated for other land uses. There was only one scenario where there was an oversupply of commercial land, and that was scenario 2. So again, key findings that came out of the EOA is that there's an existing supply of about 290 acres of industrial land to meet a forecasted demand of 7.4 on the low end to 102 acres, depending on the growth scenario. So there is an oversupply. Under Safe Harbor Scenario 1, the 2025 EOA shows an estimated demand of about 46 acres over the next 20 years, which is slightly more than the 40 acres identified in 2019. Next slide. And just to provide some context in terms of how much industrial development, employment development has been occurring over the last several years since the 2019 EOA was updated. Total land absorption since that time comes out to about 17 acres. There are 2 projects currently in the pipeline that would absorb industrial lands. One is Phase 1A of the Crane Data Center, which would include about 10 of the 35 acres that comprise the Crane Data Center site. So it's about a third of the overall site for the first phase, Phase 1A. And then there's a proposed project at 600 Elm Street consisting of 3 buildings for warehousing or distribution. 600 Elm Street is south of Highway 47, far south end of town at the end of Elm Street. And the total proposed building square footage for that project is about 635 square feet on a 39-acre site. Slide. So in terms of review, the EOA was reviewed by the Economic Development Commission and also the Planning Commission. Since this is a legislative matter, the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council. And back in March, the Planning Commission approved a motion recommending the City Council adopt an ordinance to amend the comprehensive plan to include the 2025 EOA update. And the Planning Commission also recommended that the City Council endorse employment growth scenario 1 as the basis for making future land use decisions affecting the zoning of employment land, because it is one of the accepted methodologies under the Oregon Administrative Rules. Next slide. So in conclusion, the staff recommendation is that the City Council accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and move forward with an ordinance to amend the Forest Grove Comprehensive Plan to replace the 2019 EOA with the 2025 EOA as a comprehensive plan appendix, and that the City Council also accept the Planning Commission's findings of fact that are included as an exhibit to the ordinance being considered by the city council at this time, which includes employment growth scenario 1 as the and that concludes the staff presentation. Be happy to answer any questions council have.
Do any counselors have questions for staff? I don't see any. Okay, persons in the audience or on Zoom may now present testimony on this matter. If you wish to testify, please provide your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. City Recorder, has anyone in the community auditorium signed up to testify? Okay, is there, yeah, you would like to testify? Come on up, Mr. Reed. This time you get 3 minutes. You don't even have to ask for it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said you get 3 minutes this time. I believe.
30
right?
minutes? you mean?
3. No. Holy moly.
I asked you that before. 3. I can't understand the difference between 30 and 3.
Oh,
I need to
gosh.
go back for mediation.
Jeez.
Mayor Wenzel and Commissioners, Dale Feek. Crane data center. We've got 3 options you have, right? From what I just understood. I didn't have a chance to study this too much, but you have 3 options. You have the option 1, option 2, and call them scenarios 1, 2, and 3. I'm in favor of scenario 2, not scenario 1, based upon what I've seen in the way of land and necessity of land. So, and especially since we've got a big problem now with Intel laying off a bunch of people. Don't need as much land. You got data centers that don't need as much land. We got Crane data centers that's got phase 1 and may not need another permit if they get through Bonneville and not have to have a permit to do another one. So I don't like what's going on there. So in the way of what we need and what is wanted by the economic development, my understanding is the person who just spoke is Tim Letterman, and he's a realtor. Realtors are biased toward development. And I really like the idea that you're going to have somebody else on there that has different points of view that's going to be appointed to and have different criteria for people being on that economic development commission. I like that. I liked what Jerry Johnson said when he made a presentation to you before about data centers and taking too much land. You know, the data center, the first one was proposed, had a land, and they couldn't get the substation to it, right? So that didn't even go through the planning commission. I mean, didn't even go through there. I thought it was actually a land use application. It was not. They finally realized they couldn't get it. Now you got Crane Data Center that weaseled their way in. That's a funny word to use for me. Weaseled their way in because they got the first building with 10 megawatts with the power and light giving them okay and 2 more transformers so they get that much power to them. So they got in already. I don't like that. I think that's kind of doing it the wrong way. That's my point of view. So I'm not quite sure what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to study, get informed, and make good decisions, what I'm asking you to do. I have 45 seconds left. The floodplain. I'm concerned about that. The Bureau of Reclamation made a presentation here in this chambers, nothing related to your chambers, they just used the space, about the flood, and if there's a breach of that Scoggins Dam, where that flood goes, where the water goes. And that needs to be considered in all planning. And not only Crane, and I'm displeased with what the wetland people did in their technical advisor and wrote a report because it's biased, okay? And so I'm challenging that. And I don't think anything should happen in building that Crane data center until that's resolved. I'm done. I just began.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to give public testimony? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to comment on this matter? If so, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, I will now ask for a motion from the council to adopt ordinance 2025-01, the first reading and to continue this public hearing to the May 12th City Council meeting for the second reading of the ordinance.
I move that we accept ordinance 2025-01.
I'll second.
Okay. Counselor Martinez moved and Counselor Falconer seconded the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Does anyone have any discussion on like which option? You guys are fine with one? Okay, no, okay, sounds good. Will the city manager please read the ordinance by title only for the first reading?
Ordinance number 2025-01, ordinance amending the Forest Grove Comprehensive Plan to replace the city's 2019 Economic Opportunities Analysis with the 2025 Economic Opportunities Analysis Update, and adding the 2025 Economic Opportunities Analysis Update as a comprehensive plan appendix, file number 311-25-000002-PLNG.
Thank you, Jesse. Will the city recorder please call the roll for the first reading?
Counselor Martinez?
Yes.
Counselor Marshall?
Yes.
Counselor Valenzuela?
Yes.
Counselor Schimmel?
Yes.
Counselor Falconer?
Yes.
Mayor Wenzel?
Yes, the motion passes 6-0. Thank you. So we'll hear this again at our next meeting. Okay, moving on to council communication. We're going to start with our council president. Council President Valenzuela.
All right. Thank you. So the Policy Advisory Board had its their meeting. We had our meeting last Thursday, and we finally completed the consolidated plan. The consolidated plan and the 2025 action plan. So we had several meetings to go over the draft, to make some changes, and it's finally done. And now we're waiting for the Washington County Board of Commissioners to consider approval of this consolidated plan. And that will happen on Tuesday, May 6th. Once that happens, then I will email each of you the consolidated plan for the county. Also, we discussed some funding, some monies that are left that usually go into, hold on just a second, please. They go into an account so you can earn interest. But given the current situation, we decided to go ahead and put that money to use and just spend it, because there is a lot of need out there. There is more need for housing, emergency housing, that we need to take care of. And we don't want to take a chance with the funding that it's left. I'm looking for more information on that. So that's I can't find my notes. I apologize. So those are the news that I have.
Great, thank you. Councilor Falconer.
I had, let's see, since our last meeting, Barney Reservoir and Joint Water Commission, we made our budget recommendations, and there was a few updates on some large capital projects during the leak that they were able to fix right away. So it did. The Historic Landmarks Board met with them. They're planning a window workshop on June 21st. They gave an update on SHPO grant that they'll use to hire a consultant to help them with developing the downtown. So they also presented a draft timeline for that work. I had a meeting with Jesse afterwards, where I have some questions about, sort of within that timeline, maybe some additional touch points for council, because in my mind, the worst thing that can happen with an advisory committee is that a whole lot of work get done, go to the planning commission, and then we don't see it for the first time until, there's a really big project. And I think it's really important, and especially in light of the goals and objectives, the work plan that we all have established for the next few years, that work be tied back together really, really cohesively. Also, they talked a little bit about there will be, at our next meeting, there will be their presentation to council. So we'll look forward to hearing from them. They're also looking forward to presentation or having presence at the farmers market, chocolate festival, national night out event. And then we had an update from Friends of Historic Forest Grove, and they also will be doing this summer their legal training, because they are anticipating having some actual land use hearings. So they wanted a refresher on how to conduct. And I think that's it for my updates.
Great, thank you. Counselor Marshall.
All right, so at a Parks and Rec meeting on the 16th, they were talking about Forest Grove softball and baseball has fixed up four unused fields, and soccer's been maintaining fields that the school district isn't using. So they've been utilizing that. Plans are still in line for NAMS to have lights by fall for their field. Eastside is in final design, should be done by the end of the month due to the falling tree. Knox Ridge are meeting with design and contractor, looking for community input on that. I think they're going to be setting up at the Wednesday markets for input on that. Powell Park is in the final design. Hazel Stills has 2 more fixes left for the final updates to be going, and this has been about a year overdue on that. Dog Park is opening. Carousel has been removed from Rogers Park, and a replacement has been requested in the budget. That was been a big issue with maintenance down there. Downtown baskets are going to be hanging soon, working with the high school for the plants. For the rec side of it, they had a spring break camp, had about 18 kids a day throughout Joseph Gale. They went to Sub Stewart's, went bowling. The summers, they're actually returning their full staff to Camp Grove. So it's a pretty cool thing. So they don't have to train anybody with that. They're looking at new programs for their aquatic camp. They're going to be looking for the age group of 10 to 14 years old for that. Also, they're going to be starting their summer kickoff Saturday, May 3rd at Rogers Park. One other thing I wanted to get your guys' input on is that there was 2 resignations from Parks and Rec Board, leaving us with, I believe, with 7 members and the student liaison, our student advisor. Trying to get your guys' input. Should we leave them open until next recruitment, contact the interviewers that we did not choose, or put it back out there to get more applications?
Well, with the people how many people did you interview that didn't get chosen? And would you have chosen them? I mean, were they fine?
It was more of the sections that they were in is what we were kind of basing it on. And so we actually filled some at large with the people that were, because we had a lot from certain areas. And so I would have to look into it. I can't remember what areas they were supporting. And we'd have to look to see if that, or if we can transfer those people that if they were at large to replace them would be easier. Well, I need to work with Ann on that. So if it is at large, then it's going to be easier to fill, obviously. So
I think that we need to do a recruitment anyway in the spring, because we just heard from EDC and they have a number of vacancies. HLB has vacancies. Now, I saw the Parks and Rec had 2 resignations on the consent. So, I mean, I don't know where the other ones are, but I think we might just want to do a spring recruitment. And, we also need to, you all talk to a lot of people. So if you know people, to encourage them to apply. And it's a great way to get involved and not have as much of a time commitment as some other volunteer spots.
that was my thought as well. I just told Ann I would discuss it with you guys and kind of get your guys' input. But my thought to her was put it back out there, see if we can get more people to apply for it, and more interviews and set it up. So I'll get that back to her. But other than that, that's what I got.
Great. Thank you. Counselor Martinez.
I have nothing to report this evening.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Schimmel.
I might take that time. Thank you. First, I want to appreciate Councilor Falconer for improving on my question to Tim at the EDC, because I think it is very important that we consider professional competencies beyond the bylaws for the work plan this year. So I'll clarify that with them at the next meeting. And so with the chamber, their wine walk is this Saturday. So if you don't have your tickets, please join. They just continue to expand on that each year, and they're very excited about it. It's not something I was obligated or liaison to, but I attended nearly all the vision labs because my job allows it. And I just want to express to Jesse and his staff, and this is someone who's spent a career in strategic planning, visioning, exercises in corporations, this stood up to any one of them. This was an exceptionally facilitated process and considerable community participation. There was, I think, somewhere between 70, 80 people who participated in 2 rounds of labs, and I saw a consistent turnout in the second one, follow-up lab. So it was a very impressive process, and I think in terms of the recruitment to boards and commissions, we should advertise this as an exciting time to join a board and commission, because this vision work is going to pour into those boards and commissions. So, and a lot of the common themes were broad based in terms of both resident and tourism opportunities. I know there's an important balance because the tourist takes the parking spot of the resident who's complaining about the parking. But that aside, there's good broad-based interest. Certainly a lot of infrastructure needs we got to address to ensure we provide for our basic needs. And then I want to take some extra time, Mayor, if I'm allowed. CCE is going to be speaking or spending a lot of energy on the police facility bond at the market and trying to spread that word, encourage people. But I wanted to make a statement that I didn't get a chance to last time, and just to express both to my colleagues and to the public the urgent need of the police facility bond. And I say this with great respect for the challenges that our public faces. But I want to underscore the dire need for the proposed facility bond, especially as we continue to hear from residents about the rising cost of living, concern over additional tax burdens. The primary opposition that I hear is clear. Many simply don't feel they can afford more taxes, and the price tag feels too high. However, the current facility is no longer habitable for its intended use or capable of sustaining vital emergency services, especially during a major event. It poses serious health and safety risks for both officers and administrative staff, which in turn threatens the city's ability to deliver uninterrupted services for a community. We know of critical deficiencies that should have been dealt with already, including a failing HVAC system, impacting air quality and temperature control, displacing officers and administrative staff often. Seismic vulnerabilities put lives at risk when our services are needed most. Infrastructure gaps include unreliable Wi-Fi, limited power capacity, and issues locating replacement parts. Roof deterioration and water intrusion are also a regular problem. Possible violations of occupational or public building codes put the city at risk. And there's impacts to recruitment and retention in an increasingly competitive landscape. We also have no identified surplus funds to solve these issues without the bond. And if it fails, we'll be forced into difficult decisions, potentially cutting or delaying other valuable services, including aspirations outlined in our Forest Grove Forward. An important question is, what else do we have to go without? It's a real one, and unless addressed proactively, this could become a costlier crisis with greater long-term consequences. As we enter our next budget cycle, I will continue to advocate for the protection of essential services and the health and safety of our staff, even if that means difficult trade-offs. I trust that each of us will be doing our part to persuade the public by clearly and respectfully communicating the critical nature of the bond to our community network. Thank
you. Thank you, Counselor. Okay, our city manager update. That's you.
Thanks, Mayor, members of the council. Just a couple things really quick. We are updating our city limit signs. We'll have 4 signs, one on the east, west, north, and south. We're also consolidating our Tree City and Purple Heart City signs along with our city population signs. That should be going up within the next month or so. As far as the Vision 2040, Councilor Schimmel mentioned something about that already. I did just briefly. We have a work session coming up on the 2040 plan at the next May 12th meeting. A lot of that will be centered on some of the feedback from the Vision Labs and the various engagements that have been going on starting 6 months ago. So look forward to that. Friendly reminder, the Budget Committee will be meeting May 13th and May 20th. We are looking at still having those meetings over at Light and Power. Staff has been very busy trying to prepare the draft budget. The draft budget will go out, I think, on May 7th. So expect that both to the council and to the Budget Committee. Update on Glow Up. Glow Up has started. I want to give kudos to Light and Power. They initiated their work last week and are doing great installing some of the power boxes. Also, in terms of, we had a request that if it would fit within the budget to install some additional power boxes on the west side of Main and on 21st, both on the east and the west side of Main. It looks like we will be able to accommodate that request. That would be primarily for the farmers market. You saw the new layout that was presented by Adelante. This would augment that setup and allow for events on both sides. And then last, I'm expected to attend League of Oregon Cities this Thursday and Friday. I will be available, but I'll likely be traveling Wednesday evening and then at the conference Thursday and Friday, returning Friday evening. That's all I have. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, full transparency. I've been rushed around all day, so my notes from my MMC meeting are still in my classroom on my desk. But just, an update with the legislative session. I mean, it was just crazy long session. I think they said like over 4,000 bills. They've got it whittled down to 1,700 right now. But that's still super out of control and crazy. Transportation is going to probably be deliberated out until the final days. There's some housing ones. I just think there's a lot of, it's just crazy to me. And then nothing really ended up, the league had told us that they were going to look at measures 5 and 50, and that never went anywhere. I'm sure we're all not super surprised by that. So anyways, that's the update that I remember. I had 3 pages of notes, but I cannot remember them. Just a few. I'd like to thank the Chamber, the Forest Grove Cornelius Chamber, for hosting the annual city update today. It was really cool to get to hear from Mayor DeLynn from the city of Cornelius and about all the things going on in Cornelius. With transportation projects, park improvements. Hopefully they'll get funding to purchase the Cornelius gym, because Cornelius, and that will become their community auditorium, their community center. So I thought that was a great event. And in addition to this, so at noon is the summer recreation kickoff at Rogers Park this weekend, and then Pacific's having their 2nd annual powwow, and the wine walks going on. So there's it's a pretty busy Saturday in the Grove and a good day to be out and about. I would just like to echo Councilor Schimmel's comments and just thank the council for showing up to the listening sessions and talking to people. We're in the crunch time for this police station bond, and it is a critical need of our community. The next listening tour is going to be May 7th. So, any amount of time you can spend talking to people, showing up and supporting that would be great. And I'm just going to end it at that. And the only other thing I would update is that we are prepared. Joyce is preparing for our delegation to our sister city. So Councilor Schimmel will be the counselor that attends, represent the council, and I will go. But that planning has begun, and some interviews for interpreters and some different things. So I appreciate the Sister City Committee for volunteering on that. Okay, I'm going to adjourn the city council meeting. Do you guys mind staying and